And I think we are live on a Tuesday night on Rob EVH 5150. How's everybody doing? I see Ryan's already in the chat. Ryan, I tried to make it on a night this time. I actually pulled my head out of my butt, and I tried to make it on a night that you didn't have a show on. Last time I just spaced out, but thanks for jumping in, buddy. Hope all is well. Happy New Year. Jerry Leica is here. Yeah, I gave Jerry a heads up today that we were going to be doing a show tonight. So anyways, we'll just give it a couple of minutes and we'll give some introductions, and I'm going to bring in the mystery guest. So we got some fun stuff to talk about tonight, guys. CW, how you doing? Who else we got? Mark M. Hey, what's up, Mark? How you doing? Thanks for jumping in. Jordan Perkins, what's up? Not too much, buddy. Not too much. Long day today. It's actually been kind of a rough weekend. We lost our dog. Not to start out with a negative thing, but our Barney's okay. Barney's right here. But Stella, our other dog, only 4 years old, I found her dead on the floor Sunday morning. So Sunday afternoon. So it was kind of a rough couple of days, but I guess it was her time. Just a out of the blue heart attack. We don't know what happened, but it is what it is. But thanks, man. Thanks. Hey, Van, what's going on? No, Jerry, you're right. And this one was totally unexpected. Totally unexpected. The pictures I've posted of Barney and her were, she was fine. I let her out in the morning, and then we went and we're getting ready to go pick up Jess's kids. And I went to say goodbye to the animals, and Barney's sitting right next to her looking at me. I knew something was wrong, and I called her. I said, Stella, what's going on? And I walk over, and she was gone, just totally out of the blue. So it was kind of a train wreck there for a little while. And Jessie, my wife, came down, and but we had her for a number of years. But that's our first family dog in this situation where we lost. But anyways, it is what it is. But thanks, guys, appreciate it. Nick, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. So anyways, Tuesday night, I wanted to do a show, and Barney's here. So Barney, what do you think? Say hi. What do you think? Yeah, the Rob EVH Dojo 5150 mask, right? So wanted to do a show, and going to try to get these back up and running a little bit more so now. Things are leveling out. And a good friend of mine who I've known for a long time, and has I don't want to spoil it quite yet, because when I bring him in, I don't want anybody to know who it is. I think maybe one or two of you might know who it is, but other than that, you guys will all know who it is once he jumps on. But he's a great guy. He's a great friend. I've known him for a long time, and he's done a lot of work for me. And I'm just excited to kind of pick his brain a little bit. So without further ado, let's bring him in.
Here I am.
Here he is.
For the people. Thank you. Rob, you're great. Thank you for the kind words. This has been way too long coming. This is the first time we've done this in however many years. So I've done a couple other shows. They've been a lot of fun, but it's about time that you and I sit down and do this. So I'm excited.
Oh, you ate one too, Ryan. So I think it was Craig. You were close. I mean, that Craig will be on again sometime. I'll have Craig on. Craig's a good friend too. I think, Donnie, you and I a few years ago, it was right before Dave passed, we did a 5150 show. You were on, Mike was on, I think McGuire was on, Chris Locke was on, myself, Dave Nesdall, John Conklin was on, and then, Fruitcake Tony, Charles Green, and those folks. And we did a show on, I think Neil Daly might even have been on that one. I don't remember. It was a whole bunch of us.
I think Hubbard jumped in, remember?
Hubbard
jumped in.
Yeah, we were in a discussion about, was the 5150 6 neck screws or 4?
Yeah.
And then Chris jumped in and spilled the beans, showed it was only 4.
Yeah.
But Anyways, Donnie, welcome. I've wanted to have you on my show for a long time, and thanks for jumping in.
You're most welcome. We've been talking about this for a long time. I think after that show, you texted me that, we got to get something set up, and just it never happened because, you were busy. You've had a lot of busy life situations for a while now. You haven't been able to build too many cars. You haven't been paying my bills like you used to with all the stuff you had me build.
Yeah, I know. I got to get back in the swing of things. I mean, most you guys only see a small portion of the wall, but it's surrounded by guitars, and a lot of them here Donnie has built, and we'll show a few of those. But tonight, I want Donnie to kind of show some stuff, so we're going to pick his brain. It's funny. You and I have known each other about 8 or 9 years, I think, is when we first started talking. I think it was back in 15 or 16, around that.
Yeah, that's probably when we first started interacting directly. But I remember you and interacting with people, you and your group of people that is the predecessor to my group of people back on the Halen.com forums in 2008. So this whole thing goes back a long time.
Yeah, those are back in the days when we were painting these things up with all we had was Hit Parader and Circus magazines and Guitar World, and then we started getting our hands on some young guitar mags, and that was a game changer.
You and Dimitri's paved the way for a lot of what has come since.
Yeah, Jimmy's a great guy. Dimitri's awesome.
I love him.
It's funny when I got into building these things in 95, 96, Scott Smith and Jerry, who's on here. Jerry, he was one of the four, the forefathers, so to speak, and Dimitri. And there was another gentleman by the name of Richard Armstrong, and Rich and I still chat a little bit. He's up from Vancouver, British Columbia. He has a massive Van Halen guitar collection too. Well, we were just, I jumped into this, and those guys all kind of, Scott and Jerry mostly kind of started guiding me. This is what we do. This is how we do it, and back then you couldn't get a maple hockey stick headstock, And
even when I was starting in 2009, 2010, I remember I got a no-name Swamp Ash Frank replica body from eBay for over $300, which today is like crazy that you would pay that much for a Frank replica body.
Right.
And it was not nearly as accurate as things are today. And I know way back in the day, you'd have to get like a 3-single route body and route it out yourself for a Frank and all that. So things have come a long way.
They certainly have. And now, I mean, it's amazing. I think I started out, my first guitar was a Kramer Striker. Well, actually, my first guitar I started playing was a Fernandez Strat style. And I remember I was taking lessons from a guy, and he's like, "Hey, if you want to play Van Halen, you got to get something with a Floyd." I'm like, "What's a Floyd?" This is back
early. I know back then that Fernandez was the first mass production facility for the Floyds.
Right? Who would have thought that? I had no idea. And Fernandez was one of them with the Hanson Metalworks that were doing all the good stuff, all the prototype stuff while Schaller was tooling up. But definitely, I didn't even think of that. But and then all of a sudden, I got a Kramer, and then I'm going to stripe the pick guard, 'cause I didn't have no idea how to do the guitar body. And then another Kramer, and then the PV Wolfgangs were coming out, and it was quite a ride, and just a lot of fun. And boom, I mean, gosh, 29 years later, whatever it is, here we sit with all these guitars. So many of them I wouldn't even imagine that I would even have, and so many of them are thanks to you and other folks like you for being able to build them. So it's been a lot of fun, and the biggest thing I like about this community is the friendships that we've been able to foster. And thank goodness for the internet, we're able to do shows like this, and and just geek out and entertain ourselves on this. So, but with all that being said, I appreciate it, Donnie. Thank you for everything. I know that I've had people call me in the past the Van Halen guitar historian, and one of them, not the, but one of the Van Halen guitar historians. And I know I always kind of enjoyed, learning things and having a lot of knowledge. And as Scott, Jerry, and I have talked about, in the past 8-9 years. It's like, man, these younger guys, they are just crushing it, with paint jobs, with, from the Chris Hubbards to the, Craig, obviously from CHS Custom Guitars, to Matt Anthony, to Justin Kananovich, all these younger folks, yourself, took the reins, and it was just like, whoa, this is incredible. And I know on Facebook, on a lot of the Van Halen pages, there'll be a question that'll come up, and a lot of times I'll know kind of the answer. I'll know where we're at, but as far as the specs are concerned, as far as fine details, a lot of times you will jump in and you'll write this piece, and it will have details that I'm like, holy crap, I didn't even know that, or whoa, and so, thanks to folks like yourself, we're all still having a great time. We're all still learning, and new pictures are coming out. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When we lost Ed, you and I have talked about this too. When we lost Ed, it was a awful time. It was a very sad time for the Van Halen community. But on the good side, on the upside, it is just like, it's just exploded with more, more Van Halen stuff, more guitar stuff coming out, more information, more whatever. And I think that's going to continue down that road,
And we have good people taking care of Edward's legacy and making sure that this stuff gets seen and displayed. And some of it's already happening, but it will continue to happen, where Ed's guitars will be able to be seen in museums potentially down the road. So, and there's no community like the Van Halen community, and there's no fandom like the Van Halen fandom. So people are obsessed. There are lots of them. There are great relationships in these communities, and that's kind of, I think, what drives all of this, so that we can continue to learn new things and push the envelope. I mean, with what you're talking about with specs, I think that is where I have a particular niche, in that because I build guitars and I formed relationships with the guys who made Ed's original guitars, the Unkerts, the Lynn Ellsworths, the late Lynn Ellsworth, and guys like that. I had the ability to suss out some of these details that a lot of people haven't, because you need to both understand how to build a guitar and have the relationship with the person to ask the questions, and then also be obsessed with these details to collect it all. Right. But that's why, when you mentioned the paint guys, that's another great example. They do something. I mean, I can paint stripes, which we'll get into, but those guys do it to a whole different level, and their relic work is amazing. And it takes guys like that who understand that field to research the guitar, to figure out these discoveries in the paint department, just like I've figured out these discoveries in the necks and the bodies and the histories of the manufacturing side of it. So that's all to say that this large community has definitely benefited from coming together and having these niche minds to sort out all these details and bring it all together just for the love of Edward. That's all it's about.
Totally. Yeah, that's a couple great points. I mean, it's interesting because everybody seems to have their niche. You have that niche of building the necks, of building the bodies, of knowing what, working with lock guitars back when Chris was running it. Now when Connor's running it, you have a part of that legacy, and that's just, like I said, so impressive, because like we said, years ago, you couldn't even find a maple hockey stick, headstock. Now, not only do we have them, we have all the different shapes. We have, folks have templates. It's just crazy. So if you want to build something,
we get stuff like that going on.
Yeah, totally. And I know on my Kramer ad guitar, Donnie, I think this is a lock body, but this neck is only maybe a year and a half old, and this is one of your necks. Yeah, and
I recognize it from a mile away.
Yeah, and it was made exactly like what you just showed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to have folks, that specialize in those, and then we get into the paint department, as you said,
right.
And we have all those different folks that are just crushing it. So it's great to be in this community, and it's great to have this kind of talent, and me being someone who's collected these things, and I'm a player, but I'm more of a collector. I can play, but I'm not in any way a caliber of a lot of the folks. But it's fun. It's just a good time, and it's just a great time to be a Van Halen fan. It really is.
Yes, I agree.
I was watching your interview that you did on Fruitcake Tony's channel. Great guy, great person. I'd love to be on his show again one time. When you had the late Lynn Ellsworth. And Donnie, I'm just going to say, I mean, if you could just explain for a second, how did you come about actually meeting Lynn and, developing that relationship with him? Because, I mean, that is just something that there's not a lot of people out there can be Van Halen buffs like us and say that they developed a relationship like you did. Because, I mean, that guy thought a lot of you. I mean, matter of fact, he called you like a son. How'd that all?
Well, and let me up front just say how honored I am to have that relationship with him. It was only about 2 years, his final 2 years of life, but it meant a lot to me, especially coming from where I started, not building guitars yet, but just being interested and watching videos and hearing about Boogie Bodies this and Lynn Ellsworth that, and then getting into building guitars, working to develop a reputation and to learn my craft, then to have it recognized by one of the men who I looked up to and now look up to even more after having shared a relationship with him.
Yeah.
So to your question as to how it developed, the internet, it's an incredible thing. So Lynn's wife, well, first let me back up. So one comment I'd like to make before we move on from it is about the niche. One aspect of that is hardware, right? So you got guys who are studying the old Floyd Roses and the old pickups and stuff. One such man, Darren Drewick, I think that's how you say his name. Sorry if I butchered it, Darren. Darren's incredible, and he worked with me to do a lot of research on Ed's guitars because he was exclusively interested in the Floyd aspect of it. Because Ed's guitars and Floyd Rose actually interchange a lot with their early histories, more than a lot of people recognize, I think. So Darren actually had these old Boogie Bodies necks, ebony, two-piece ebony. So they came from one slab of ebony. Whole neck was ebony, not a fretboard, the whole neck. So Darren actually found these old Boogie necks, and one of them, if you guys, anyone in here is familiar with the ebony neck Boogie Bodies guitar that Ed had in '84, it has a logo that says Van Halen on it in like a stylized script logo. And this neck that Darren got wasn't a Strat headstock, it was a Tele headstock, but it had the same logo on it. So it was as if it was a sister neck made at the same time and given to Ed and maybe a reject. So long story short, the neck was made for Ed with that. It was rejected or returned for whatever reason, and it went back to Warmouth, who worked with Lynn at the time. And Warmouth sold it off, in the 1980s, sometime in the 80s. Darren buys it, and then he sent it to me to do work to because it was incomplete. It needed work on the Floyd nut. He wanted me to do measurements of it to get dimensions and whatnot. I needed a truss rod nut. So I started doing work, and I made a duplicate of that. But using those specs, I duplicated Ed's neck, the Strat one, and posted that on Facebook. Around the same time, I noticed this person kept popping up here and there in Van Halen posts, and it was Diane Ellsworth. And I thought, that's interesting. Let me check this profile and see if it's a relative of Lynn. And sure enough, it's his wife. So I just shoot a friend request, and just to see, this account doesn't have that many friends, and they're not that active on Facebook, but they are in comment threads and whatnot. And sure enough, she accepts my request. We don't interact. She doesn't comment on anything. We don't send messages. But then, like 5 days later, she comments on a post I made of the ebony necks, and she says, "Hi, Donnie. My name's Diane. I am Lynn's wife, Lynn Ellsworth's wife, and I showed him these posts, and he liked what he saw, and he wants to talk to you. Are you willing to get on the phone with him?" So it was as simple as that. I mean, it's almost like fate. It's almost like all this stuff fell together at the same time, and the right people saw it in order for me to develop a relationship with Lynn, which I did. And from that moment, I mean, we talked for over an hour. I asked him anything I could think of about old Boogie Bodies construction and specs. One thing I asked him that I find of note, and some people who know what I'm talking about will get a kick out of this. I never knew if the Boogie necks had a 10-inch radius or a 12. And when I was working at the time with Chris Locke, Chris always argued 10, and not that we were arguing about it, but he contended it was a 10-inch radius, and I contended it was a 12. His take was that 10 matches a Floyd nut, and it's a Gibson radius, and that's what Lynn was going for. I don't even remember why I thought maybe it would be a 12, but we went back and forth, and we actually, through this, we changed the Locke Custom Guitars radius spec on the Frankie necks a couple times because we were unsure if it was a 10 or a 12. So long story short, I asked Lynn this. I say, when you made your old Boogie bodies next, what radius did you use? And he said, well, I had 2 radii. I had round vintage and flat modern. And I said, well, what would those have been? And he said, well, the round was 7 1/4, like a Fender, and the flat was 12. I said, you've never used a 10-inch radius? He said, I've never used a 10-inch radius in my life. So whenever you're building a Frank, if you want to be accurate, and between us, I mean, just talking specs, the difference between a 12 and a 10 is not substantial in terms of playability and nut setup and whatnot. But if you want to be accurate to what the man himself said, get a 12-inch radius on your Frank or B or whatever Boogie Bodies replica you're doing. But that was like that's an example of how when I have a mind for building guitars, and he has a lot of experience. And I mean, Lynn invented the concept of aftermarket guitar parts. I mean, think of all the companies now that make a living and a lot of money is paid and a big industry out of this. Lynn literally invented it in 1975.
Yeah.
So I got to pick his brain on specs like that. And I think that really helped me to learn more about the history of the company, Lynn's kind of concepts of building guitars and how he approached it. And also it helped me fine tune some of the replica parts that this information was never publicly available. It would be something you'd have to buy old Boogie Bodies and check and then just assume, is this sanding tolerances that's making it this way, or is that the spec? But it was great. I mean, Lynn would end conversations telling me, talk to you later. I love you, Donnie. You're great. Like he would say that as if he's my uncle or my grandfather. And I felt very honored that he seemed to see me as like the next Lynn Ellsworth, as the guy taking the reins from him, which is an incredible feeling. Lynn was building guitars until 6 months before he passed. And I have the last body he ever made. In fact, he had a shop fire which destroyed basically everything, all of his stock and most of the body and necks. Yeah. So, and that was the day of his 80th birthday and retirement party. His shop burned down, or the day of. Yeah. And one piece that survived that fire, which it's put away in storage right now, so I'm not going to get it, but I brought it out before, was a hollow. He was making hollow guitar bodies, very interesting sound, with a spalted mango top and a basswood back. And it was very crude. It was unfinished. It didn't have a neck pocket. It was very incomplete. But he gave that to me because he said, listen, this I'm not building anymore, and I want you to have this. This is the last piece that I made. So one day I'll build that out, and that will be my commemoration towards Lynn. And of course, many of you may know that I built Lynn Ellsworth a guitar. This is before all this happened, but I was very honored to have a relationship with him. So as a gift, I got with his wonderful wife, Diane, and she conspired with me to help build him this surprise gift guitar. And my concept behind it was a zebra wood body. I wish I had props here and pictures to show, but hopefully the description is enough. This beautiful zebra wood body, and the neck was almost like the 78 Frank replica neck that we make, but it had a rosewood board, pearl dots, just a gorgeous, high class upscale guitar. And the first thing he said when he got it is this an old Boogie Bodies that I made? And that seeing that on video is incredible.
Yeah.
To see that. I fooled the guy, I fooled
That's
him.
the only confirmation you needed,
Exactly. So to put a bow on all of that, my relationship with Lynn, I cherish it. I'm so glad I got to have it. I'm sad that he's gone. He died. He lived a full life. He 80s enough. He accomplished a lot. I wish he lived longer so I could still pick his brain. I still have his phone number in my phone. And when I'm scrolling my contacts, I'll see Lynn Ellsworth and say, damn, I wish I could call him one more time. But it's lovely. And not to pivot away from Lynn, because that's the big one, but also guys like Paul Unkert, who are still around. Paul's great. You've had a relationship with him, and I know Jerry has, and lots of people have relationships and ties to Paul, and he'll talk to you about anything. He'll give you his time whenever. So I love that these guys are still out there offering, because they were right place, the right time, and they did good work to make these guitars that we're all in love with now happen. And it's awesome that they're entertaining guys like us. They're telling the stories, and they're helping us to make our replicas accurate and everything. So I'm grateful for all those. And there's more. There's certainly more who I've developed some degree of relationship with, who have ties to Ed, and I'm hoping to keep adding to that list because I just love it. I really enjoy it.
Well, definitely keep that phone number in your phone because that is definitely one you never. I mean, never want to delete that contact, but definitely, it's funny. Um, just hearing the story and the fact that you were able to share a lot of that relationship you had with Lynn with us through the videos and the interviews you did with him. That is amazing. I mean, those interviews will never get old. I've already seen the ones that have been, on Tony's on Tony's show and whatever, and a lot of the stuff that you posted, Donnie. I saw a video, and I don't remember if it was Facebook or what it was, but with Lynn actually opening the case of the guitar, and that was pretty special to see him actually open one of your creations and have that kind of response, like what we've had for his creations. That's got to be pretty special. And the fact that, well, just gonna say the fact that he, you said that he would, the way that he treated you, the way that he, talked about you and that relationship you had, I think what's interesting is he knew you were very genuine. He knew this wasn't just some crackpot that was coming. Right, exactly. He knew that you had a passion for what you were doing. He knew that you were good at what you did. He knew that you had a genuine interest in being part of that history. And I think the fact that he knew that genuinity, I think, is what made that relationship with you guys so special. That's something you can take to your grave one day.
Yeah, I'm very, very grateful for it, and I cherish it. And Lynn was the same way. And thank you for the praise. Lynn was the same way. Lynn actually didn't get nearly the credit he deserved for what he did for the industry. Not just for the Van Halen stuff, but the things he did for the guitar manufacturing industry were ahead of their time, to say the least. And he never made a ton of money doing it. I mean, it's funny. He was a traveling cancer researcher, and he was building guitars for Eddie Van Halen and Eric Clapton and Mark Knopfler on the side as a hobby.
I know, isn't that crazy?
It is, and he did well enough with some of his endeavors with guitars, but he should have been Floyd Rose and been driving Ferraris and stuff around in 1984. But he just didn't make it happen because he didn't have the business. Not that he was not business savvy, but he was genuine about it. It wasn't like, let's find any way we can to squeeze as much money out of this as possible. He was supplementing any money that, a more opportunistic businessman might get. He was, substituting that for the joy he got.
Sure.
So that was enough for him.
Well, Jerry just sent, we'll jump through some comments here in just a second. I don't want to, we got some great conversation here going, and I look forward to getting more of it going because we got a lot to talk about. But Jerry just said Warmouth ripped him off. And, without slamming them too much, I know exactly we know exactly what Jerry's talking about.
Yeah, Lynn certainly thought so. Lynn was not very happy with how that went down.
Yeah.
The way Lynn described it, and I'll say this because he's said this publicly,
sure,
without just beyond our conversations, but essentially Lynn was making only bodies, and then the Warmouths lived down the street. It was a father and son, and the father was a retired watchmaker, so he had experience with milling machines and tooling and making jigs. So Lynn was interested in making necks, but didn't know how to do certain aspects. So he got talking. Some relationship was formed between them, and the Warmouths helped him tool up to make necks. Well, eventually they just decided, we don't need this Lynn Ellsworth guy. We're going to take all the templates and go do our own thing. And it even went as far as the turtle logo that's still in use was drawn by Lynn Ellsworth as a Boogie Bodies logo, and Warmouth just lifted it, and that's been the logo since. So
I remember you told me that, and I never knew that.
Yeah, that was all on a. I don't know if you've seen the guy Spark Slinger. He's a trader. He trades Boogie Bodies. Yeah, he had some text interviews with Lynn years ago, and Lynn had divulged that. But in the photos, you can see in like 1980, the Boogie Bodies logo is the Warmouth turtle, and Lynn said, and of course I believe him because he was always a genuine guy, that he came up with that logo himself and brought it to the guys. So I mean, it's I don't want to get into this too much either, but it's the whole Grover Jackson thing, right? The more opportunistic and the more shrewd businessman comes out on top. It's not really about the skill or and Grover Jackson was a skilled builder, and so were the Warmouths, but it was more about who's more willing to take this cutthroat business opportunities seriously.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, yeah, we could go on forever about folks that I mean, even Ed, with Floyd Rose, and a lot of the stuff, big, yeah, I know it's crazy. I got an interesting Floyd Rose story to tell in a couple of minutes, but we'll just go through a couple comments. OU812, Ryan, our good friend, who has a great channel, good friend of ours, great guitar player, plays Summer Nights probably better than anybody I know. Said, I wonder if Donnie could make me a GM2 body. He's a trans trem guy like me. I got a few trans trems too. I'm sure Donnie could. So, look him up. We'll see.
You can always get in touch with me and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, totally. Randy, what's going on? Donnie, if you see any comments in here that you want to jump on, go right ahead if I miss them. And guys, like I said, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to try to jump back and forth best we can. Andy Carson, what's happening, buddy? But if we miss any comments, it's not intentional. I promise you that. Mark M said, what's a Floyd? Yeah, seriously, right? And that will come into my story about Floyd Rose when I was hanging out with him back in 19 for a little bit. What's your thoughts on the EVH Frankenstein Relic series? I have the black one. Jason Hobbs says, how you doing, Jason? I've played them. They're great guitars. The EVH line is definitely is pretty awesome, no doubt. I've actually been pondering getting one of the white Frankie replicas one of these days. But like I said, still trying to pay off the wedding. Like I said, I got to start putting money back in Donnie's pocket. But
yeah.
I just gave him a little bit of business recently. We'll talk about
You did, and I was very grateful for it. It was fun to get back in the saddle building for my boy.
I'm very grateful for it because Donnie is making me a VH1 neck for my VH1 guitar. That actually was a gift from Jerry because it needs a new neck, and Jerry's a great guy, and yeah, there it is. That's going to be the new neck.
And no twisting, warping, or bowing on this one.
It's funny. Jerry and I have been friends for so long, and one of the guys that taught me. And I'm always on top of Jerry. Jerry, I want a guitar. I want thing. No, it's not for sale. No, it's not for sale. No, I can't give it up. And I always say, I'm like, just no, okay, just gonna stick with it. Sure enough, one day down the road, hey, you want that? I'm like, yep. I think my Rude guitar. My Rasta, my Circle. Well, Jerry did the Circles for me. My prototype Ernie Ball Amber Music Man, which is exact edge of hot dog routes and all that awesome stuff. Everything. Jerry had a VH1, and I was looking at upgrading my VH1. And Jerry's like, well, I'm going to let you have it, but, it's the neck's got a little bit of a backbone, a twist. I don't care. I want it. I'm telling you, I said, I don't care. I want it. And I took it, and like I said, it's great, but it's time to make it playable. So Donnie, help me out.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was excited. I whipped this up. What, in a day and a half?
A day?
Yeah. I mean, I've been in overdrive lately. Without getting too much into it, I haven't been doing as much work just because of the guitar market being weird and just. So whenever I get the opportunity, especially for a guy like you, who I know exactly what you want and I have all the files, I mean, if the wood's sitting there and the truss rod's sitting there, I just go knock it out. And it's fun because, necks like this are cool because, we're always making revisions to make things more accurate. And the most recent revision to this neck is just the super slim profile on it. In fact, it's so slim that I'm actually afraid to make it for certain people because, I think it'll weird them out and they might be like, I don't like this. But these came from these dimensions came from the Super Eruption, which I trust the dimensions of that guitar. The really expensive 1 of 8 they did when Ed was still around for the 78 Frank, and I trust them because they did have the real neck. Chip had rescued the real Frank neck, the original. It was apparently in a box that said "burn" on it, so Chip pulled it and saved it, and So knowing that they had the real one and that it's been kicking around, when I saw those very, very slim measurements, I said to myself, there's no way they just picked this out of the air. They must have gotten this from the real thing. So very, very interesting neck. When you get it, you'll see. I think you'll like it. It's very slim and wide, and when you sit with it and hold it, you can see kind of how Ed developed certain shapes and patterns when he was playing on this neck, just because it tends towards that. So cool build. So thank you. It was great to hear from you to be like, hey, let's do a neck build.
Well, I'm going to go grab something real quick because I forgot to get this. Donnie, you and I talked about this yesterday. Would you mind telling them real quick? Because Jerry's going to sit there and say, like, oh, man, you know, you're probably just going to throw that neck out. Would you divulge what I'm going to I'm going to get the guitar? And we had a great idea, Donnie and I did, and on what I'm going to do with that backbowed twisted neck.
Sure, yeah. So I'll do the honors, I suppose. So we were talking on the phone, and Rob was telling me what, we were talking about that he was going to put this new neck on, and he's like, yeah, I'm not, I'm thinking about what I might do with the old one. Before he said it, I knew exactly what he was going to tell me. That he was going to take the neck off and crudely route it for a Floyd shelf, just like Ed did, ruining the neck in the process, and hang it on the wall. I mean, look at that. Like, you can't not display that beautiful bird's eye. But so Rob's going to intentionally junk this neck by crudely routing a Floyd route into it like Ed did, and hang it on the wall next to a photo of Ed holding that neck out of his pants like it's, I won't say the rest. But if you've seen the picture, you know what I'm talking about. And you have the mental image. He's got the bumblebee, and underneath the bumblebee coming out between his legs is this neck with the ruined Floyd shelf. And that photo will exemplify what Rob is trying to do with his little display. And I love it. It's so funny.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be kind of fun. I mean, no part goes to waste. Donnie, I had one question for you, which is interesting. And I was interested to find out what your take was. What your take was on this. Well, Jerry actually made this guitar, and it's awesome. It's incredible. He's got pretty much every single detail. I always thought that the real one had a big steel block, but I noticed EVH is using brass. What was the real one?
It was steel.
Yeah.
So, I think Ed stated at some point that it was brass, but if you look at the photos, it was just the trim from his 61 Strat stock. Yeah. There was nothing weird about it. Of course, on the 78 album cover, he has that Mighty Mite trim, which did have a brass block. But as far as the 61 Strat trim having a brass block, that was never the case. Maybe he experimented with it, and we never got a photo of it. But the primary block in that tremolo was the stock steel block. And in fact, in pictures from Japan, you can pretty clearly see the plating coming off. It's like really scratched up, and you see the rust where the plating has been removed from that tremolo over time.
Yeah. Well, I have some pictures. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But I have some pictures from, I think, Player magazines or Young Guitars or a combination of both. And it definitely looks like it's a steel block.
Yes.
Because a couple of them are color. But so that is definitely something that's on the way. Donnie was was nice enough to help me out, and like I said, I think he knocked it out in like not even a day. It's crazy. But Randy Price, what's going on? Andrew Russell, hey Andrew, how you doing? I was actually chatting with Andrew today. He got in some 5150 stickers for his Music Man that I had sent him. That was pretty cool. Thank you for sending that along. Guitar Man 45, how you doing? Dwight Bailey, Blue Mox, what's happening? And Mr. McGuire. Mike, I knew you were going to pop in.
Hey, Mike, thanks for all the deals you've given me lately, and I got your body. I got your body on the way. So I'm just saving the rest of it out.
Do another run FRT5s, please. Mike's great. He's the best. He's got the, gosh, I tell you, the stuff. We have conversations like Donnie and I do with other people. Like, I keep talking, like, I've been looking for a nasty cordless for my, I made a mock-up on my own. It's okay, but it's not. You cannot find those freaking things anywhere. And I've been looking for one for my 5150 banjo Strat. You know, Scott's got one. I got a real one.
Yep.
And Mike says to me, he goes, hang on, I'm working on something for you. So, anyways, Mike's great. He's got some really good stuff, and there's a lot of other folks out there too that make great stuff. Mike is period correct guitar parts has helped me out and a lot of us out with some of the most amazing stuff you could possibly imagine.
The stuff we could not get 10 years ago,
No.
5 years ago. It was impossible. Like
it was impossible.
Yeah, you'd have to get a whole guitar and take one piece off of it and just so.
Well, my my Kramer ad guitar. By the way, this is what the back of the real one looks like, and I'm not going to tell you how.
I know too.
The back looks like.
He's correct.
The neck plate looks like, and that is the right serial number. But anyways,
thanks, Mike, again.
Yeah, right. This Floyd is one of Michael McGuire's creations, and it is just right down to every last little spec that you could possibly imagine. It is great. It is it's an FRT5 whale tail, and it also has thanks, babe. And it also has it doesn't have the chrome on it, so it's to replicate. And I don't know if you guys can see it. This poster, very simply the best guitar you can buy today. That was a prototype Floyd. That was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Donnie, that was on the roster, correct?
Yeah, that was on the roster, and that was the first Floyd with the whale tail and the fine tuners moved back. Because prior to this, for less than a year, but about a year, the earliest fine tuning Floyds had vertical, like the post in the back went straight up, and Ed didn't like where it put the fine tuners. He said it was too busy next to his palm. So my theory now is that he asked Floyd to move the fine tuners back, which is a generic request, and Floyd's solution to that was to make the plate longer and do two bends, one of them coming up and then one of them flat. So that moves the fine tuners up and away from your hand. Because this was kind of a one-off request prototype sort of deal, that I believe, there's the FRT4. So that's the position that the fine tuners were in when Ed said, I don't like this, let's move them back. And you see that that's a vertical 90-degree bend in the plate, whereas the modern way of doing it has that 45 or so degree bend, and that moves them farther away.
This is a real Hanson Metalworks FRT. This is a real one.
Wow.
And this is going on my 5150 once Matt Anthony finishes it. And I just tagged Matt the other day. Matt is on the final touches of it. And this is the real deal.
That's incredible. That could build a few guitars. That one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. But this is that FRT4 that Donnie was talking about.
Yeah.
These are just great. Fernandez, correct, Donnie? These made by Fernandez?
I think that would have been Fernandez. Mike knows more about this than me, but I believe so.
Really cool stuff. I'll just say this real quick. So this is kind of an interesting story. It's pretty funny. So where's the picture? Oh, here we go. So back in 2019 at NAMM, I run into Mr. Floyd Rose. There's me and Floyd hanging out, and there's me showing him some stuff. And I'm in the process of showing Floyd Rose a Hanson Metalworks FRT5, and Floyd's like, "Oh, we still make those."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And I did not want to be the guy that's correcting the the creator. Yeah. So I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I got to get a couple more." He's like, "Yeah, we still make those whale tails." And
they call them whale tails too.
Wow. I mean, I use the term, and he said, "Yeah, we still make those whale tails." Wow. And I'm like, "That's so cool." And it's like, I was like, I had everything I could do not to say anything, and it was just, I mean, it was cool. I mean, I got a chance to hang out with Floyd Rose, and I mean, Donnie and I have talked about this as well as other folks. It's so ironic. Now, Lynn would not necessarily be an example of this because he was pretty, from what I heard and what you've experienced, Donnie, he was pretty spot on with his memory. Yeah. But it's funny because it's ironic. If you talk to folks like that, Ed, and no disrespect meant, you cannot ask those folks details about Kramer guitars they played and made. I mean, Ed didn't even know he had a Kramer neck on the Frankenstrat.
I remember that story you told me.
He didn't even know. I mean, as a matter of fact, he had 3 or 4 of them on there. Mm-hmm. And you can't rely on the source on certain topics, because in their defense, these guys weren't sitting around living in the past like we were. We live in the past. We're the historians. We geek out on this stuff. That's what makes us. That's our craft. That's our, and we do the research. We do the legwork. We put the stuff together, and that's what we love. So it's great when you have an opportunity to talk to those kind of folks. Again, I'm not talking about Lynn per se. I'm talking about Floyd or Ed or whatever. But when it comes to a lot of details about, what kind of bridge did you have on the roster strat when you played it, whatever was the Circles guitar midnight blue or was it black? There's a whole bunch of stuff we can go on. It's not necessarily the horse's mouth that's going to have the correct answer. It's going to be some of the offshoot people that have done research, but that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fun. I mean, that interaction I had with Floyd was awesome. He was the nicest guy. Actually invited me to his place one day. I've never been able to take him up on it, but we were talking about Lynn Ellsworth in your relationship with Lynn. Now, my relationship with Paul Unkert was nothing to the degree of the special quality of what you have with Lynn. It was nothing more than just, I met him a few times, went to his shop, got a chance to chat with him, and I haven't talked to him in a while. But I remember showing Paul this guitar, my Neptune, and I remember showing him this, and, I got a chance to see the real one a few times, when it was in LA. And Paul, he looked at this guitar. That's one of Michael's creations too. He looked at this guitar and he goes, "I remember that guitar." And he took the neck off and he stamped Punk underneath
cool.
the neck pocket. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Chris Hubbard painted this one, and I cut the pick art myself, and a lot of cool stuff. But anyways, the story goes, as I've said this before, there's pictures of Ed painting this guitar in the factory. We think that was more of a photo shoot, correct, Donnie? We're not.
Yeah, well, certainly the whole thing was somewhat of a photo shoot, because that same set has him on a milling machine, and we know Ed wasn't using a milling machine to make guitar bodies. So
right, yeah. Well, the funny thing is I remember Paul telling me they painted this guitar, and Ed had this at the NAMM show in January of '83. It shows him sitting there with Dennis Berardi. Yep. Just cool pictures on it. And Paul saying that they got all the white stripes painted that day, and they went out to lunch, and Ed came in and just devastated it with black. It's such a cool story. I mean, who knows if it's really, whatever, but kind of neat stuff.
Paul seems pretty sharp. And I haven't met him yet, but I've interacted with him a lot. In fact, Dave Nesdall introduced us, and we talk several times a year. Several times every month or so. And he's always quick to answer my phone calls and my texts, and I shoot him pictures of stuff I'm working on. He's for the things he does remember, he's very sharp, clear, and then he's up front when he does it. He's like, I don't know, man. It was like 40 years ago. I tried my best, and he's a good example of one of those guys' willingness to share and to help out.
Yeah, I remember talking to him about the stripe jobs. When he was doing the paint jobs for like these types of guitars, like the Vetus and the blue headstock, and Kramer had all those guitars. And he said it was so crazy back in those days. He said we just grabbed whatever was there. Yeah. Sometimes it was a sunset orange type paint, sometimes a little darker. Tape was whatever. We would just cut it. And he used the term willy-nilly. Everything was just willy-nilly, he said. It was just It's just so funny how haphazardly these guys were back then. George Felice and all those folks, that were such a huge part of that. And we sit here and we try to hone in on every little thing, and they could have given two fucks.
Yeah, the one person who can answer specific questions didn't commit it to memory, because it was just I think about it too. I couldn't tell you details about. In fact, it's in the other room somewhere. I'm selling off some gear, and we can get to that. I'm trying to put some money together for a purchase in my shop, but I sold the second neck I ever made the other day, and I got full price for it because it's a nice neck, and I refretted it for the guy as a favor, just to make it nice and tip-top shape. But getting back, I couldn't have told you anything about that neck if I didn't have it in front of me with calipers to measure the nut width and the carve and all that stuff. I could have told you vague things about it, but that wouldn't have comported with reality. So it's like, you know, these guys didn't commit this stuff to memory back then. And even if they did, it's like, how do you remember it 40 years later? I can't remember some of this shit 5 years later.
Right. No, I know. It's funny, Donnie. You know, it's like it's kind of a funny story. Donnie and I were having a conversation on Messenger one night on the Frankenstrat. And I don't know, somebody was saying something about the Frankie. It wasn't the real one or whatever. This is all the speculation that the Met was in the Met wasn't the real one. We all know it was, but whatever. I remember somebody said something about the one that was in the Smithsonian, which is one of the replicas. And I wrote back and I'm like, hey, no, that was the real one. I went and saw it. And then Donnie sends me a message. He's like, hey, dude, I think you probably know this, but he's like, I just, you know, whatever, that it was the one you're talking about was in the Met. And I'm like, oh, crap. You know, I got on. I deleted my comment quick because there is so much knowledge that is going through geeks like us brain. By the way, who was it just said? Jason Romero, Rob and Don, the two titans. Glad to see you. Thanks, Jason. Donnie's got me beat by a long shot, but it was, you know, it's funny because there's just so much stuff that goes through our brains. It's like inevitable that at some point we're going to have a brain fart. Yeah. And that's what I enjoy, though, because I'm one of those guys that, you know, like if you catch me in something where I'm inaccurate, tell me about it because I want to know. I'm not like, no, it's not the case. You know, I mean, there's so many keyboard commandos out there on these sites. Donnie knows.
I've had threats on my life over someone saying that I was wrong about a detail in a neck, and I won't get into who, but it was pretty funny.
It's crazy, you know. I mean, you got to take everything, as Alex Van Halen says, with a grain of salt. But you know, when it gets to that point of toxicity and people fight, you know, okay, dude, whatever. If you think that's what it was, great. You know, it's all about fun. You know, I'm not making money off this. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm doing this because I like it. You know, but it's kind of funny. It's interesting. Donnie, did you ever get a chance to talk to Paul about when you were designing all these headstocks, you know, and you've picked apart and detailed and tweaked and went back and forth and found final products, you know, when you were working with Chris and you know, I'm sure you still do this with Connor and a lot of the other folks, when you were designing the headstock shapes, the hockey stick headstock shapes, did you ever have a chance to talk to Paul and get some of his templates? Because I know Paul showed me. He's like, these are the original templates we had for the 5150, the Hot for Teacher, and I don't remember if it was a Kramer ad or whatever. And then these pieces of paper from the 80s. I'm like, holy crap, is that the?
Well, so on that point, when Chris and I developed the LCG, you know, Kramer necks, replica necks, we did not have the benefit of a relationship with Paul. But I will say that, interestingly, specifically to the point that you bring up, that they're paper templates, having the template doesn't get you all the way because there were three sizes. He had small, medium, and large. Paul told me that he concocted those Ed gave him the shark guitar to spend some time with and trace out the headstock. It was intentional to use the Ibanez Destroyer pattern headstock as something Kramer would be doing. Obviously, they were dealing with a cease and desist from Fender, and they were probably trying to figure out their future for headstock shapes. So anyway, imagine you have this neck that is laminated the way that Unkert did by cutting that ball end off and flattening the edge and plugging the tuner holes, adding wood, as we all know he did. It's this pretty well-known stuff. When he sticks that paper template down and you trace the paper template, if you get that template skewed this way or moved this way or this way, even if he uses the same template, to trace them out, everyone's going to be different. And then he's bandsawing and sanding them, so there's a hand finishing element to it. So no matter the templates, I mean, it would probably be nice to compare the templates for general sizing and stuff, but the way we derived the headstock, at least on the 5150, because there's a lot of good photos that give us reference. Yeah. Without saying too much and getting too into like trade secrets here, there are photos of the 5150 headstock where you can clearly see the dowels, the plugs where the holes were on the original beak or strat head neck, whichever it was at that time. And therefore, if we have accurate drawings, which we do because we've had many of them, of beak and strat head necks, we can then reverse engineer that and map the 5150 back onto those holes and then trace the shape. So the naive approach to copying a headstock is simply to scale it up based on, you know, the nut width or the scale length or something and just trace the shape out. That works well enough, but photos lie. Photos will be distorted and skewed, and there's perspective involved, and it often gives you an incomplete visual of the headstock, whether it be scale or rotation or sizing. Very hard to do without having a real one. And obviously, all those necks are different. We can't have the real one. The way that we derived it, and another factor we used was using original Godot tuners, the same tuners that are on Eds, and tracing those, you know, measuring them, making 3D models, and basically mocking the thing up before we manufacture it, see if all the spacings line up. You know, the gap between the tuner, the screw tab and the next tuner.
Yep.
So there have been a lot of back and forth revisions and tweaks and touch-ups to get that neck as accurate as it is. I trust and believe in them as much as I can, but I'm always open to something new. Maybe
Sure.
And Paul, to the original question, when Dave introduced me to Paul, it didn't happen, obviously, but Paul offered to give me his templates, to just be like, dude, you nailed these headstocks. I've never seen someone make such an accurate replica of my necks that I made for Ed. I want to give you the headstocks give you the headstock templates as a gift. And that didn't happen, but I mean, that's really cool that he thought that highly.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. Yeah, it's you bring up so many good points, you know, and the fact that there's folks like you that are, you know, that are tweaking this stuff and studying this and researching it, but at the same time, you know, still open to, you know, suggestions or, oh wow, oh, here's a new piece of information or whatever. I mean, that's why we're always learning. But I'll tell you, guys like you have got to the point of almost, we never would have thought we would be doing this 10, 15, 20 years ago. We never thought we'd be in this boat. I mean, it just, other than having the real one, you know, it's this is just stuff that's, like I said, it's so much fun, from stuff that you do, from stuff that Mike does, you know, all these other people that are in this business, you know, that take the time to put the products and you know, quality out that you do. It's awesome. It's so much fun to be able to get this stuff to you guys.
Absolutely. And if I may say, we stand on the shoulder of giants, and that would be you and Jerry and Scott and the guys who came before us. We couldn't do what we do today if not for what you guys did prior to us, because you gave us the platform to get started. You know, if we had to start from scratch and learn all the things that you guys had learned prior to us, we would still be hashing that stuff out today. But the forward progress of humanity is ever apparent in the Van Halen community.
Yeah. Jerry just sent me a picture, and I'll show. It's really, really, really cool. It's from 1982, Diver Down. And as we can see, there's Ed. You can see the gold FRT4 that he had and a nasty cordless. Yep. Jerry, I've never seen this particular picture before with Ed with a nasty. So that is going in the files. So thank you very much. Jerry's always great. He'll throw these pictures at me out of the blue every once in a while and be like, boom, here you go. I'm like, whoa, I never saw that. Where'd that come from, you know?
Jerry, Scott, Dimitri, these guys have thousands of files. Some of them, Scott told me he has like so many unorganized files that he has to just get around to organizing, because we'll be talking about something. He'll be like, yeah, I have a picture of that. And then he'll get back to me like 3 days later, like, dude, I've been looking and I know I have it, but it's like I got 500 photos unorganized. I can't find it. So
I know when Chris Hubbard and I went to see the Frankenstrat, the real one at the Met back in 19, we spent the day there, or a good portion of the day, and then we drove to Adam Reaver's place, F.U. Tone. Went to him, hung out with him for a while, then we ended up at Scott's for the night. And I remember it was like 11, 12 o'clock at night. We're sitting down in his guitar room, and Scott pulls, you know, we're having beers and stuff. Scott pulls out this box of pictures. Wow. And, you know, he's like, hey, check this out. Check this out. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, like, you know, like, and of course I'm not taking pictures. I'm not, you know, whatever. I was honored to see some of the pictures that him and Adam showed me of some pretty freaking cool stuff. But it's just, It is. It's so much fun to to jump into this and to be part of this community. It really is.
Yeah.
And I tell you, Donnie, I'm just like I'm sure you're the same way. I'm like a kid in a candy store on Christmas morning when a new neck or a new body comes in, or even a new picture floats around. Or I'm like, whoa, cool! I got to do that now. I got to tweak one of my guitars.
I mean, you can't see it in frame. Well, you can see all the necks and bodies and guitars, but I have stacks of wood over there, stacks of bodies and necks back here on the shelf, stacks of wood in the shop. And see the difference between you and I is that when I see one of these things, I'm running out to the shop to build a neck or a body. I'm like, oh, now I got to copy that, And for me, it's like, it's also a business move because I'm doing research and development into the next product. But it's like that childlike wonder and the fun that goes into it that you feel when you see this stuff is the same that I do when I'm in the shop making money. Yeah. So it's like, how lucky am I, right, for a living to get to build this stuff?
Totally. You're figuring out ways to make money. I'm trying to figure out ways to spend.
I'm trying to figure out ways to take money from you.
Oh gosh, I tell you, that's what makes the world go around, though. It really does. Yes, but at the end of the day, we're all the same because we all just have fun and we have a good time. And and you talk about cherishing the relationship that you built and fostered and will always have with Lynn, which is so special. I never was I never was lucky enough to have a relationship with someone like that from the Van Halen community, but I will tell you that I also cherish relationships that I have and I've built with folks like yourself and others through the years because you guys are all like family to me. Absolutely. A lot of you guys I haven't met, but I know one of these days I will because I'm never down in your neck of the woods. I will be stopping by, and as you know, you and many others have an open invitation here to Dojo 5150 when you come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you got an open room here too, so you won't be just stopping by. You'll be soaking it all in, and you'll be tanning out by the pool when it's January. You can't do that at home, so.
Yeah, seriously, we got about 4 feet of freaking. Well, not that much, but we got a good chunk of snow up here, and it's about 4 below. But we got the wood stove cranking, yeah, it's. I'll make sure my wallet is thick when I come down.
Yeah, you're gonna have to if you see the shelves of guitar bodies and necks.
I know I won't be able to. Yeah,
my buddy Brad, who did a lot of work with Chris, and now we're working together. He's staying here actually. He's living here and helping me around the shop. And I mean, the second he got here, he was like, "Oh, let's build this, let's build that. Can I get this neck? Can I get that?" And it's like we built like 3 or 4 guitars from him in a couple weeks. It's
awesome.
Like, yeah. So no, I mean it's great.
Yeah,
absolutely, and I can go all day. I mean, we'll start to get into the stuff I have laid out here. I think.
Yeah.
So,
wait.
The stuff I have here, we'll start here just so I can start to clear it off. But this one is probably the only one of its caliber. People have done this guitar before, but to actually do this guitar with the Dan Electro neck set in place, carved in place, lacquered, one-piece ash body. This is a vintage DiMarzio PAF, like a real one, and then these are real Mighty Mike saddles. These are real West German Schallers. So like everything I could do on this guitar to get it done right, I did. And
I saw the pictures you put up on that when you put it out, and I was like, well, I have one over there. I'm looking at it now, and it's okay. It's great, but it's not anything to the detail of that. You even nailed the grain, the dark grain in the middle of the body. That's pretty hard to do. Well, what I did on mine, I took dirt and I rubbed it on the whole paint. And it works, but it's not. That's just freaking awesome.
Yeah. So this actually, Darren, I think his dad or his uncle has a sawmill, and he was getting these beautiful ash boards that were one piece. I mean, look how wide and like big this would have to be to make a guitar body. But this is one piece ash, and he sent it to me for free. And then it had some flame figuring in it, like flamed ash. You can see that like in here, that's flame. Like you get flame maple, but it's flamed ash. And he's like, "Hey, I need a bumblebee body made." And I was like, "Well, I need a Megazone. Do you have more wood?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got a piece." So he sent it to me, and I just, I made this out of it. I mean, it was incredible.
That is awesome.
And I'll tell you, I don't know if you dealt with this, but this is a pain in the ass to wire, to get the wire channel from here to here and then here to the jack and then run everything. It was awful, but
On mine, my guitar, the guy that wires all my stuff up, I put it all together, but I'm not a soldering guy or whatever.
Right.
Well, anyways, I brought it up to him. He's like, how do I drill this out? And we went back and forth for a while. I finally figured out, but yeah, that was a treat.
Yeah.
That was.
I injured myself doing it. I won't get into how because it was pretty gnarly, but I was drilling a hole and I hit my hand basically.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. That I think you have the most accurate Megazone guitar that there's not a lot of them out there. There's only a few of us that have that replica, but yours is without a doubt, but probably the closest I think anybody's ever done, other than the one Carl did.
Yeah, I would probably think so without sounding conceited, just because, like you say, maybe 10 people on Earth have this monstrosity.
Yeah.
I was the only one crazy enough to go to this length, but I do have one more that I think fewer people have, which is this thing. This is
cool.
The cat guitar. I'm gonna go put this down while you ogle at it and tell the people what it is.
Yeah. So, I want to talk about that because Dave Nesdall and I had a talk about that guitar one time. Eddie played in Fair Warning tour a couple times, and it was the name escapes me from the Good Rats, but
John Gatto.
Yes, yep, that's it. Dwight Bailey, how you doing? Guitar Talk Universe. Antone Sardo, how you doing? He says, crazy to see the Don live. This is Robin, he says.
Hey, dude.
Alan Garber, what's up, Alan? How you doing? Alan's a great guy. He's been one of the historians, incredible player. Like I always say to Alan, if you ever want to learn Van Halen stuff, specifically the older stuff, even the newer stuff too, but specifically the older stuff, note for note off the album, he critiques that down to a science. And I'll tell you, it just blows me away. I've learned a lot from that guy. Alan was actually on Dweezil Zappa's Van Halen show, the episodes, and that was pretty awesome. I have that one saved on my phone. It's a good listen.
It is. Dweezil, if I can, before we go on, Dweezil's a wonderful guy. I spent some time with him. We can talk about that a little more later, but
yeah,
when we get into the other guitars surrounding, that he has some connection to. But Dweezil's a great guy, and now that's one more connection to make.
Yep, for sure. Paul Glover, Music Therapy Laz, what's up, guys? How you doing? The Big Robin Short, how are you? Nick Horton has a question for you, Donnie. Hey, Donnie, Ed stated back in the day that he sanded the neck and refretted the 78 version neck on Frankie. Could it have been flatter than 12-inch radius?
Yeah, so my take on that is that Ed was not being totally truthful about his involvement in. Let me just put it this way. I don't think Ed ever, nor did he know how to fret a neck. And also, I did ask Lynn about this. I said, Lynn, did you ever deliver Ed a neck without frets? Because Ed didn't say he refretted it. He said he got it without frets to get a discount. That was in the 1980 Jazz Obrick interview.
Yep.
And he said that he put the frets in and then leveled them with sandpaper at 400 grit. And he was describing how he does a fret crowning. To me, it came off as Ed had this stuff explained to him. He soaked in 40% of it and then said he did it. And my reasoning for thinking that he was just outright lying is that he was in the midst of this whole thing with Charvel and Grover Jackson making copies of his guitars. And I genuinely think that he wanted to do everything to draw the attention away from these other guys who were actually making his bodies and necks and parts and not give them business because he felt that he was being taken advantage of at that time.
Yeah.
So my answer to that is I don't believe Ed did refret it. Perhaps he sanded the back of the neck, but he wouldn't have sanded the front to change the radius, in my opinion.
Good. That's actually really good to know. Thank you for that question, Nick. Appreciate that. Andy Carson, got to run, guys. Duty calls. Thanks for jumping in, Andy. How you doing? Appreciate it. If I missed you, have a great night. Kurt, what's going on? Kurt 5150, how are you? Let's see what else we got here real quick. Any other questions? And then we're going to let Donnie go on this really, really cool rare guitar that I don't think anybody's ever done.
No.
Isaiah Marquez, how are you? Let's see. Jerry, what else we got? Stan Muka, how you doing? Stan, Cobra Kai Platoon. Robin Don, I've rewatched all of the old videos with you guys over and over. So great. Thank you. Rob, how about some updated videos with better sound on Frank 5150 deep dives? So I think my 5150 video that I did 6 years ago, wow, that has got so many thousands and thousands of views, and I have to update it again. I'm waiting for my newer 5150 88 version from Matt Anthony, who's finishing it up now, to come in before I do that. And I'm going to pull some information from Donnie and some other folks, and then I will do another updated video, because while that is a great video, there is some stuff that's a little bit, there's some stuff that's we've learned and whatever. However, I do need to get some better sound for some of my live stuff that I'm doing. But with that being said, that is coming. And Donnie will throw up these guitars on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm like, whoa, there's one. I mean, I have a yellow double neck Kramer that Paul Unkert did, the Secrets guitar, and that's a great guitar. But Donnie took it to another level. We'll talk about the Rockinger thing in a minute. I did not realize that was not a Schaller Badass. I knew it had a Rockinger on the bottom, but I didn't realize that. Talk about that after.
Yeah, Paul told you it was a Schaller Badass, because that's what he told me, but it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. So Donnie dug a little deeper and got some more info, and then, like I said, the Megazone, incredible. And then he's going to talk about this guitar that he's got right here that I don't think anybody's done.
Yeah, well, I'm almost done with it. The reason I haven't finished it yet, and notice that mirror pick guard, by the way. The real one has Mighty Might 1400 pickups in double black, which I haven't been able to find. They're tough. So I might capitulate and just get a modern one instead of vintage, which is what I want. I like to do vintage for what I call holy grail replicas, because just like you with the Hanson Whaletail, I mean, that's worth $3,000, but it's worth it for, if you're going to do the replica right, it's worth getting the real thing. So this, I mean, a lot of people have seen the photo of Ed playing this guitar, but you can't even really tell it's a cat, because he's got gaffer tape, striped all around it and over the head. This actually came up for auction recently, and it was listed. I think Sotheby's had it briefly, and then it was taken down, either because it sold, and one of the terms was that it be scrubbed, or it didn't sell, and But I was able to get the pictures taken down, saved and put into my CAD software. So, I knew about it. I kind of had it kicking around like, that'd be a fun one to do. And when I got these wonderful pictures of the real guitar from this auction listing, I had to do it. So, maple body with this red lacquer on it, mahogany neck, just a no face plate or head plate, just a lacquer, black lacquer. And there it says
look at the headstock with the ears. That's so cool.
Yeah, so I tracked down some real patent pending Grover tuners for this. That's the only vintage part I have for it so far, and it's a weird guitar. The balance is it's very neck heavy, and there is a comfort contour there, but it puts it out here. You got to play it like the Beatles. So you can see in the picture, Ed has this thing jutting into his sternum, and he was clearly uncomfortable playing this guitar. But I heard, and you can tell me if you've heard the same story, that first of all, he was given this guitar by John of the Good Rats, and John had it inlaid, engraved Eddie Van Halen. And it's funny that the auction photos are so good. When you read the little engraving here that said Eddie Van Halen, they misspelled Halen as Hallen. It says Eddie Van Halen with 2 L's.
Somebody told me that one time. I forget who it was, and I haven't even thought of that since you said it. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. So it might have been Scott, because I know Scott and I were kicking back and forth at those listings and talking about it, trying to figure out specs. So anyway, I kind of just took the pictures and scaled them the best I could, and I don't know. In fact, when I posted about this, John saw the post on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, that looks great. Here's my number. If you ever want any, if you want any info about them, I still got 8 of those guitars, those cat guitars." And
so cool. Yeah,
it was really cool to hear that from him. But very odd one, and I'm hoping to get these pickups. If anyone out there has a double black Mighty Might 1400s, so they're they're like the super distortion, but they're the Mighty Mite version, and they got to be double black bobbin. But if they're out there, I would like them for this replica so I can wrap it up and have it done accurately.
Donnie, what was the? I mean, I know kind of a brief synopsis of how that went down. It was kind of like the the Yamaha SF3000, that the blue guitar that Ed put red.
Yeah.
Blue. He put red electrical tape all over it. Chris Hubbard did one of those. I think Scott has that now. I've been looking to do one of those one of these days too. But it was one of those one-off guitars you'd see Ed play in the Invasion tour, and then in that one, during Fair Warning. In your opinion, and there was also I think there was a was it a flying V? That there's a picture of Ed playing a flying V in Fair Warning. I'd have to go look at the picture. It was gosh, I don't remember. Anyways, do you know the story of how that guitar was given to Ed that night that he played it? Like, was it just another like, hey, check this out? And Ed was like, yeah, I'll try it tonight.
You mean the Yamaha?
No, the cat guitar.
So I got on a tangent. I was starting to get there, and as I tend to do, got off. But basically,
you and me both.
Yes. Well, there's too much to keep track of. So
put the two of us together, we'll ramble all over the place.
I know, but it makes for good entertainment, I hope.
Yes, sir.
Ed was given this guitar by John because they opened for Van Halen a couple times, and the story I heard is that Ed did not want anything to do with it, but it was on the road with him, and he was dared, or there was a bet that he had to eat fried gator because they were down in the South, and Ed chickened out and didn't do it. So his punishment was, you have to play this guitar live for a song.
I will see if I can find a picture while you're talking.
Yeah, he's shirtless. He looks totally just ripped. He's like the skinniest he ever was, and really just like sweaty. Clearly, like he's playing on the encore, and he's like this, and it's like jutting into his sternum. I mean, it's a badass shot, but it's like, what are you going to use that for? So, yeah. Sometimes I build these things as just fun things for myself because what's the point in doing something for a living if you can't have fun with it, right?
This is what I was just talking about, Donnie.
Yeah, that's him. That's this guitar.
Yeah, here it is. That is so cool.
Yeah, and it's hard to even tell the shape because he wraps gaffer tape around like the head of the cat and everything. So,
have you ever seen this one, Donnie? I'm sure you have.
I haven't, but that's a different one, of course. Yeah, but
that's John, isn't it? He's actually.
I think so.
I'll send you this. I'll text you this now, so I don't. I don't think about it.
Yeah, sure.
These are, gosh, there's so many pictures. Here's another one.
Yeah, there's a lot of his haircut was interesting.
Yeah,
there's a lot of pictures of John playing those. He sent me. I'm trying to pull it up right now. Let's see, John Gatto. I have him on my messenger. Yeah, here he is. He sent me this. He's hang on, let me just rotate my phone so it's a little bigger for you. He sent me this. These are the ones he has right now.
This is so
and
cool.
That one, the second from the bottom, I think is zebra wood, but it's rotated so that the grain's going up.
Yeah.
Instead of like along the length of the body, it's going. Yeah, that's definitely zebra. Oh, it's a top. It's a zebra wood top, maybe maple back. Yeah. So he's
the unfinished bottom one almost looks. That's kind of like my favorite. That's cool. It almost looks more like the cat image stands out more.
Right. Oh, look, wait. He's got like a little googly eye on it too, or a hole or something. That's funny.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So I haven't got back with him yet because I wanted to get this thing done and show him a bunch of pictures and then talk to him about it. But very cool, to have that. Just like that's exactly what happened with Lynn. I post something that I made and then the original guy sees it. It's like, oh, that's really cool, and wants to talk to me. And it's like, how much cooler can you get? Dave Pechelat too with the mini Les Paul. Same thing happened.
Donnie, you just beat me to it. I'm just going to say real quick, I want Donnie to show some more guitars, but I do want to give Donnie a shout out. I'm careful because I don't want you getting a bunch of requests to do things that you're not ready for. But about 4 or 5 years ago, Donnie did one of these, and I immediately messaged him because I had a little Lotus version, which was cool. And I was like, Donnie, you got to do one of those. And he's like, well, I'm not really done. Come on, help me out. And Donnie's like, okay, I'll do one for you. But I don't want you to tell anybody, whatever. I'm only doing this, whatever. And he did this for me, and I'm telling you, it is absolutely incredible. It's the thinner one that Ed played in Diver Down, and it's not in tune. It's got the built-in speaker. It is absolutely, totally exact, and doesn't have the right tuners on it. Donnie, I got to ask you too, what tuners Ed had on his, because I just got replicas.
3x3 West Shallers. They look the same as yours, but these are West Shaller minis.
Okay, I'll switch them out. And I had Craig from CHS Custom do the amber and the gloss and everything. He did an awesome job. And I'll tell you, this guitar is just. I have played little guitars on this thing a few times, and it is just amazing. Donnie, you knocked it out of the park with this one. How did this particular project come down the pike for you, and how did you go about the project?
I really don't even remember how I got hooked on that guitar, but what I do remember is that the Guitar Aficionado photos, which some of them were in Guitar Aficionado, some of them were in the Chris Gill, Brad Talinsky book of Ed's guitars. Some of the outtakes from those came out, and I think the back of this guitar was visible, more or less, what I'm getting at. So I had never seen the back of it before, but now I have a photo that's like, I had speculated on what the cavities were like. Mine's in disarray right now because I robbed some parts out of it, but this is like a custom circuit I had that I had made for the built-in amp and speaker thing. But so I saw a photo of this, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. I can wrap my head around this. Let me work on figuring out how to make the rest of it. I still didn't have it quite right because the size wasn't really working out. So, I got in touch with Dave, who made Dave Petulat, who made the real one. And I said, look, I'm trying to make one of these. This is what I got so far, but I'm hung up on the size, the scale length. He said, I wish I could tell you the scale length, but I don't remember. And the reason for that is because all I did was really simple. I took a regular 24 3/4 inch scale, same scale length as this fretboard, and I cut off the first 5 frets. So, or 4. I don't remember if it was 4 or 5. I have it in my drawings, but more or less, he just took a regular scale length and cut it off. So it's like having a capo. This is like playing a Les Paul with a capo at the 4th or the 5th. I don't remember which one. Yeah. So all the tensions work out the same. You just tune it up. Like same exact. That's why we can play little guitars with a capo, because it's really the same exact thing. So
would that be the same as the Chiquita, Billy Gibbons guitar? Is that the same kind of? Do you know, Donnie? Or
I would venture to bet that the Chiquita is not derived the same way. I think the Chiquita probably had a planned scale length, but I don't know. I know Mark Earlywan, who made those, had built some amazing guitars, especially like his automatic guitars, which are kind of like Charvel inspired but have Les Paul DNA. Really, really cool stuff that he did. And I would guess, based on how he would go about those things, that he had a different methodology. They were not connected, but yeah, so when Dave gave me that bit of info, it all clicked. I scaled my drawings to what he told me, and everything lined up perfectly. So I made this one, which I made a video of, and it's got like 10,000 views on YouTube. A cover of little guitars.
Great cover too.
Thank you. And it was, I look back and it's like I should have done that, and my tone should have been a little better. But once you make these videos, it's locked in, and then you're stuck with it. So, of course, I never painted mine. I never got around to it. And I took the battery out for some other project here, and I took the pick. Actually, the pick guard on yours came off of mine because I didn't have any material left, and I needed to get out the door. Yeah, so that pick guard on your guitar started its life here, and it's that pick guard is in my cover video.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's so awesome. I did not know that. Well, like I said, Donnie has set me up with some really, really, really cool things, and I'll just show one more, then I want him to show a couple other things. But this, my Rude guitar, Jerry painted this one, and it is what, 2 inches, Donnie, or 2.5?
It's 2.
2.
Ed was exaggerating.
Yeah, right. And you can tell the route in the bottom. It's all like wide open. You can see right through. This is one of actually, that's an FRT 7. This is a Fernandez FRT 7, unmarked, believe it or not, no logo. I did get this from Mike. and I did a whole bunch. I put the right bar on it and big steel block and all that. Anyways, I have always loved the Rude guitar. I know Adam has, the real one, Ed's real one. He has it at the not the Hard Rock, the
Rock and
Rock
Roll Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame in Ohio. I would love to get out and check that out. Great guitar. It's had a lot of stuff done to it since the Fair Warning era.
Really, just the body left.
Yeah, this is the era that I really like on this guitar. Look at the string retainer. It's like way up, buried right up on the nut. I think Donnie, you told me to put it that way.
Yeah. Well, also, what you are missing one thing. It should be gold or brass, and Mike has the right brass one for you. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's right up against the.
Really?
I don't know if I knew that when I talked to you about it, so that's probably.
No, I don't think maybe not, but I'm going to have to do that. I'll have to switch that out.
Yeah, this was a spare gold one I had.
Donnie also told me to put Schaller double tabs on the back.
Yeah,
right.
Well, they were either Schaller double tabs or these, the leftover tuners from the Frank. I just was able to get these.
Cool.
But you do want 6 in line where the bass side is the right way and the treble side's upside down, because if you look, the tuners, the posts are offset from each other, but the buttons end up in line because one side's upside down.
Yep.
So I think that was a conscious, we don't know who made this neck for Ed. We don't know its origin. Carl said he had nothing to do with it, even though he was responsible for Dano necks for Ed in the past. I think maybe it could have been Max at Image Guitars, because Ed was hanging out with Max in around 81. We see pictures of Max working on Ed's guitar before the 81 tour. So maybe Ed brought a Dano neck to him and is like, hey, can we do something with it? But this, people have speculated that this headstock shape, as wonky as it is kind of an early predecessor to what would become the Wolfgang and the Ernie Ball and all that. How true that is, who knows? But it is interesting, certainly, because this is one of those mysteries that we would love to just hit that gold mine. We've been digging.
Seriously,
we'd love this to get the ear of whoever made this thing and talk to them about it. But it's still pending. So this is my personal Rude neck that was on my replica, and it's off because, and I'll bring my Rude out now. I got it back here because I knew we'd talk about it.
Donnie, was the maple neck the first one on the Rude Fair Warning, or? So this is the one that ended the Fair Warning tour, correct?
That's right. Okay. You see the Rudes being played at the final show with this, where they're opening for the Stones.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah. So my Rude guitar, I only just put this neck back on it. So when I first built this guitar, I got a real Dan Electro 12-string neck. So it had the wide nut, 1 3/4, which Ed clearly does. If you look in photos, it clearly has a wide nut. Standard Dan Electro necks that weren't 12-string had a narrow nut. So I tracked down a real 12-string Dan Electro neck and I converted it, and I got that neck somewhere. But it was junk. I mean, the neck had been sanded so much that the steel bar truss rods were sticking out of the back of the neck, and it wasn't playing right. So I didn't play the guitar. So I made this neck, or in fact, this neck was meant to be an order, and this popped up. This little, and not everybody's going to be cool with something like that on their headstock. So I kept it, and I thought this is perfect for my Rude to get it playing better. And I mean, this neck is phenomenal. This is I fell in love with it when I got it set up and I was playing it and everything was in tune and it just sounded amazing. I wasn't happy though, because I, like you, love the Dan Electro version of this guitar. So that's when I made this one, and I had it on the guitar for a long time and it was great. But a couple weeks ago, I get a call, and I won't get too far into this because it's still developing.
Sure.
But I get a call, and I'm to go hang out with Dweezil Zappa, sound check, and then I hung with him backstage after the show because we're doing some project together. And when I went there, I knew I had to bring a guitar, so I thought this was the perfect thing. Of course, Dweezil owned for a while. He owned the Rasta, and the Rasta had a Boogie neck on it. So I thought, if I'm going to bring my Rude and I want it to play nice for him, I'm going to put this neck back on, and it's less weird. I mean, let's be honest. He's going to be less weird on this neck than that one. It's also more similar to what he was used to on the Rasta. So I thought it was the perfect thing. 2-inch, when I put this in his hands, the first thing he said is, "Wow, this is way lighter than the Rasta was," because I guess that thing was just a heavy cut of mahogany.
Yeah.
But he did sign the back of the headstock. It's hard to see. I didn't really plan on getting this signed, but then there was a guy there getting his guitar signed at the VIP, and I got talking to him. I'm like, "Hey, what guitar do you got?" Like, I build guitars, and he was a really nice guy. But I told him, I'm like, "Yeah, I brought some guitars for Dweezil and show him so he could check out." And I'm like, actually, could I borrow your pen? I might want to get it signed because why not? If I don't like it, which why would I not? But like if I don't like it, I can just put that neck back on it or whatever. So that's why it's silver. It's kind of impromptu. Anyway, that was a cool thing. So now my Rude will forever have this neck since it's how Dweezil played it and christened it with his blessing. And to be honest, this neck just plays so good and it feels so good that I can't put it down like this. So.
Well, speaking of that, I just want to show one quick thing, and gosh, forgive me, guys. This probably is not going to sound good because it's all garbled, but this is the day that this neck came in from Donnie, and I put it on. I mean, it was all wired up, but I put the neck on. And forgive me, guys. This sounds all garbled. It doesn't sound garbled in real life, but this is me messing around with this. When I first got it.
I remember you sending me this video over text.
Here we go. I'll tell you what, I don't know. That probably sounded like total garbage on the thing, but this neck plays like absolute butter.
And guess what? It's got no truss rod in it.
Yeah. What's the story? So, okay, real quick. Johnny B, not Johnny Bean, but Johnny B.
Yeah.
Did a video back when he was doing them on the necks at 5150, and Donnie, you probably saw it. A lot of folks thought this was the neck that was on the Star, and was modified, and we found out that was debunked. It wasn't.
Right.
Were all these type of Dano necks like that? Were they all no truss rods?
Yep. They had 2 steel bars. I changed. In fact, let me show you with this neck because I changed the spec on my steel bars since I made the one I was just showing. So 3/16 inch wide steel bars running through the neck, and they run, along so the neck tapers. Obviously, it gets narrower up here. They follow that taper, but it's kind of like if you've ever got a neck that had like reinforcing rods in it, like graphite reinforcement rods. It's the same idea, but there's no truss rod. That is everything to hold the neck straight. And if the thing's built straight, and I mean these frets are incredibly, I made one of these for myself. And I put it on my Star replica, and it is the best playing neck I own with no truss rod. I mean, I have the action like 0.7 millimeters. It's extremely low. I can bend 2.5 steps, no fretting out, no buzzing anywhere. It's just unbelievable. If you can build these necks straight, they don't move. And everybody who's built with, Carl says the same thing in his videos. These things are great necks, these Dan Electros. So back to your question, lots of us did think for a long time that the Rude neck was the same as the Star neck, and it was modified. Excuse me. Thank you. I'm getting so excited on my body's anyway.
Like I said, don't put the two of us together. We just trip over each other.
I know this is probably why we took so long to do this, because we knew and deep down this is what happened.
Seriously.
One obvious tell is that, well, first of all, there's a photo where you can see both necks in view at the same time. Like in that MTV where they went to Ed's house in '98 and they're taking video of the wall.
Yes.
In one clip you see the Coke bottle Star Dano neck on the wall, and then in another clip you see the Rude neck on the wall. So clearly they're not the same one. But also the Rude neck is wide. meaning 1 3/4, and the Dano is the standard 1 5/8. So if you look at them side by side, you can see that the nut is notably wider on the Dano than the Star, and you can tell by the nut. So on the Dano, the nut is narrower than the neck, so you get that ledge on either edge of the nut. And on the Star, for the brief time he played it, the nut's actually wider than the neck and hanging off the edge, and the strings are like barely on the neck.
Yeah.
So there's a few reasons why we know, it can't be the same neck. But for a long time, people identified, hey, that's a Dan Electro, that's a Dan Electro. Well, in total, Ed had 4 of them. 2 of them are lesser known. The 2 we were just talking about are the more known ones. But he had it's called a Dolphin headstock Dan Electro. Yep. If you look it up, that was on the Dragon, this Dragon thing for a while in 1980, and that was really only for that guitar, and it never got reused on anything else. But then he also had this really weird Dano neck, which was also 1 3/4. It was like a spearhead. It came out like this and to a point, and it was a 3x3. I don't know if I can pull a photo up and show it on here, but there's a photo of him playing an unfinished 2-inch thick body, another 2-inch Boogie bodies, with that Dan Electro neck in 1980, and he's doing the Ice Cream Man stretch. He's up like this, playing, doing a stretch. And we don't know, how much he used that guitar, if it was a one-off thing that didn't work out. But that neck is also still visible at 5150 in photos from the 90s, late 80s into the 90s, and 4 Dano necks in total, and a 5th if you account for the fact that he owned the Megazone, which was built with a Dano neck. So,
I did not know that. Really?
Yeah. So when I built mine, I built basically a Dan Electro neck, but with that headstock included into the body, so it's got all the same construction.
Now, the original shape on the Megazone though was different than what you and I have on ours now, right?
Yeah. It was a 2x4 instead of 4x2 tuner layout. Very wonky looking, and Ed wanted 6 in line for tuning stability because it had a tremolo. He didn't want the strings going at an odd angle. But yeah, so apparently Carl took it back from Ed after he bought it and completely reshaped and grafted wood and repainted the headstock, which is a big job. I mean, props to Carl for pulling that off because it's not easy to do on a finished guitar.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Ed had the headstock reshaped and then never used the goddamn thing anyway.
It's so funny.
It was almost on the cover of Van Halen 2, but that first photo shoot.
Right, the photo shoot, shows them that, That's something that, that information came out, or those pictures, 5-6 years ago. We didn't even know that before that. I think it was, it's really interesting, that's an example, guys, everybody watching the show, of what I was talking about earlier when Donnie and I were talking about, how we're still picking up stuff after all these years. We're still picking stuff up like, whoa, didn't know that. Whoa, we didn't know that. Here's this new picture that just came out. I'm telling you, as a Van Halen fan, like we are, like everybody watching is, there is still all kinds of stuff coming out all the time. And that's what still makes what we do so much fun. My wife just sends me a message. She's watching the show. She goes, "Hey, let him talk."
Rob's great. I love hearing what Rob has to say as much as I like talking about my stuff. So.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. Robert Snyder says, Don, Rob, don't know if anyone asked a similar question, but what is a favorite guitar project that you guys have worked on? What about you, Donnie?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, it's too easy for me to say like the last cool thing I worked on, because the first thing that comes to mind is the double neck that I just wrapped up. Which it was not. I was doing a double neck, and I still am doing a double neck for myself, but I did a one-off for a customer, and long story short, I want to go all in and get an aluminum neck for mine and make an aluminum neck for mine, but I'm not tooled up for that yet. The customer said wood neck is fine for the 12 strings, so I just painted to look like metal, which I did. But that guitar was amazing. I mean, so cool and we're going to get into this with the Rockinger story and whatnot, but the Rockinger bridge. I mean, I was talking to the Rockinger guy, Dieter Goldsdorf, the guy who invented the Rockinger and sold. Like, I sent him an email and he responded in 20 minutes, and he's in Germany.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he gave me all this information about the bridges and whatnot, and he even pointed me to the original manufacturer who still makes guitar parts. And I got with them about maybe making a run, but the numbers didn't work out for me. But maybe one day I can get accurate Rockingers made by the original people,
Yeah, it's tough. They're hard to find. I mean, you and I both have a couple that have them, but to Robert's question, this isn't necessarily a favorite project I've worked on, but it is an example of one of the many that I never thought I would have.
Cool. That's cool.
You know, with baritone neck and everything, I never in a million freaking years thought I would have one of these guitars. And this is, it's all custom.
Is that those are lock parts? Yeah, I think I remember Chris. I think I drew all that. I drew all the models.
You did, Donnie. You probably did. It's got all original McGuire neck plates and everything. But even the bridges are, what's a Music Man bridge? The right pickups. These lipstick pickups are, I think they're the real deal. But the only thing that's not is that's a Sterling bridge. But it's similar.
Well, those pickups are Dan Electric pickups.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I had one of those, I'm positing, is because the guitar he recorded that song with, that the double neck was meant to play, was a Dan Electro. So when they built the Ernie Ball, they put Dan Electro pickups in it on that baritone side. So it was like the perfect thing. Yeah.
It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
I would say, my absolute favorite Van Halen guitar after 50 something guitars I have around me right now, most of them Van Halen guitars, as much as I love them all, and Donnie's had so much to do with building so many of them, putting the stuff together. I would say the 5150 is still my absolute favorite guitar, hands down, over anything. I'll geek out over all these things, but the 5150 is my absolute favorite. And Donnie, would you mind showing your 5150?
Sure, I'm dying to, because I just got this thing set up and playing a couple days ago, and this has to be like when I plugged it in and I first heard it through my little Marshall combo here, and then later through Brad's setup. He's got a couple Friedmans and a twin that Eric Johnson owned, actually, which is really cool to play through. But it's unbelievable. Like, the way this thing sounds, and I don't know what it is about it, I am not at all surprised that Ed instantly fell in love. If this is anything like the real one, as far as feel and sound and playability, there's no surprise that Ed instantly fell in love with this thing. So mine has first run of Mike's Whale Tails, incredible craftsmanship. It just it feels so good. Yeah, I mean, it's like it performs as good or better than a real Floyd made by a huge machine shop. So. Absolutely. And it's got all the right details with the big block. I got the yellow ground wire, the Bourne's old blue pot in there, everything as it should be. And then look at the legs on the pickup, bent up the wall.
Oh yeah, they're bent upwards. Yeah.
And then
is that a real JB? Is that a JB?
No, it's a Pariah 86, but it just sounds so good.
Oh yeah, they're the best.
Stoked with how it came out. Yeah, so I was going for like early '84 tour relics. So of course, I've got the fretboard grunge, because a lot of people don't know that that's actually not like playing like dirt from his fingers making that pattern. That's where the lacquer was scraped off unevenly. So these bright areas are where there's still lacquer or some type of finish on the fretboard, and all the dirty areas are where the finish has been removed and has been able to accumulate fret dust and finger gunk and everything. So that pattern was more or less there from the get-go. So you get that really cool, like half dirty, half clean look. Headstock, you can't see it, but it's got all the tuner hole plugs. So just in the right light, if you catch it, you can see like the tuner hole plugs and the wings. I've got a real 4508 nut with the humpback clamps from Mike. And then that's just like, it's a real one, but Mike just had it and he sold it to me. He gave me a good deal. And that's one of his retainer bars flipped upside down the wrong way, just like Ed's. And this the butterfly string clamp, or whatever you call that, the little Charvel string clamp. So this was before he had the star on the headstock and in the horn, and before he had the stickers. I haven't really done any relic to the back because there aren't good photos of it. So until I see a photo, I don't want to add the relic. But like, around the sides, I was just going for like really light early tour relics. So anything I could find like early '84 that was there.
That young guitar cover where Ed's wearing the red suit.
Yes.
That's a perfect example of that. There's also pictures of early in that tour, I think March of '84, pictures of Ed playing the 1984 Kramer without the space tape on it. Early pics. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
would you? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, for the first several weeks at least of that tour, you get this. There's no tape. There's no stars. Just and clearly he had a problem with Rudy discerning which one to grab because they look too similar. So that's where the numbers came from.
Yeah. Donnie, would you say that? I mean, obviously, it was in the middle of the tour. They were on the road when the space tape popped on both of those guitars. Would you say that was a reflector on the back of the Frankie type situation? Yes. They're out at McDonald's some night and stop at a truck stop. Like I remember. I mean, I'm 51 years old. I remember as a kid seeing space tape in hardware stores. Yeah. I had no idea what it was. I wasn't even a Van Halen fan. I mean, I knew of Van Halen, but I wasn't obviously. I had no clue. Back in those days, I was watching the A-Team on Tuesday nights at 8:00. My favorite TV show, and but I remember space tape. So would you say that was something on the road? They just
yeah, absolutely. So to go to the Frank real quick, none of this is confirmed, but we theorize that the Frank was painted red when they were still in LA, but the tour had started for Van Halen 2. Yep. So you're talking early '79, mid to late March, the Frank is painted red. And the first thing they do after that is drive all the way up to Utah, and the Frank is seen there being played for the first time after the red paint. So I always theorized they're on the road between LA and Utah because they wrapped up their LA gigs at the beginning of the tour, and they're now going on the road. On the way there, he picks up the reflectors and gets that idea, sticks them on. So at first on the Frank, it was the 4 red reflectors, 1 big amber reflector, and a mirror. And then over time, he either breaks or pops the orange one off and takes the mirror off, and then adds the oval and the other orange reflectors. But with the 5150, I think it's the same deal. He clearly, I think that was more practical. He needed a way to identify them to Rudy because he's got 3 guitars on the road at the time. He's got the Hyper Teacher, the 84, and the 5150, which becomes number 1. And I think after kind of playing them for a bit, you see a lot more variety in which guitar he's playing in the first, dozen or so shows of that tour. I think he's feeling them out, deciding which one fits him best, and that's when he gets those numbers and decides, like, okay, this is 1 star and this is 2 star. That's how he identified them to Rudy, I've heard.
Yeah, and he even says that. I mean, we all know. Oh, gosh, I got to do this real quick. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get all the guitars, but we all know that this neck was the original neck on the 84.
That's right.
The headstock shape on this is wrong. I've actually, Donnie, I got to talk to you on. I need to get another. I need to get a better neck. This is.
I know exactly what you're referring to.
You know what I'm talking about? Look at right.
The droop.
Yeah, the tuners aren't spaced right, but this neck was made by Paul Unkert. This is a Paul Unkert neck. And he did it. That's why it's so special. But anyways, this neck was on the 84, and then in 1985 it became the 85 Hard Rock donation guitar that him and Val donated. And in that video that's on YouTube, Eddie talks about it. He goes, "Yeah, well, that's how I knew what neck was what. Rudy put 2 stars on it." Yep. And he said, "This is my second favorite." Well, Eddie half lied. He ripped the neck off the 84 and put it on this body and said it was his backup. Well, the neck was the backup, not the guitar. We all know the story. But anyways, Dave Nesdahl, our good friend, rest in peace, buddy. I miss you so much. Think about you all the time. Had this theory, Donnie, and I was curious. I never heard anything about this, but what you just said kind of brought it back to life. Dave always theorized that the 1984 Kramer started out in the tour as his number 1 player. And then, as you just said, the 5150 became more comfortable, whatever, who knows. But we've seen a million pictures of the 84 Kramer, with the whale tail on it and the chrome hardware. Val holding it and Ed next, we've seen all those pictures. Do you think that could have been the case, that the 84 might have been kind of in the running? Because if you go back in the US Festival, we see the 5150.
Right. Yeah, so we don't know exactly when the 84 comes into play because it's so similar to the 5150, and we know the 5150 was there at the US Festival, so he might have had both of these guitars already, or at least both of the parts, and he had only gotten the 5150 together for that show. But I think there was a lot of time between US Festival and also I think he was still using the Frank. Alan and I have talked about this a lot. I think he's still using the Frank while tracking 1984, at least for most of it. Certainly by Jump, I mean, that was before these guitars were made, because that precedes that show. So this is a very convoluted way to get around to saying that. Totally, I think it's a total possibility that he picked 3 guitars that he was comfy with to bring on the road. I mean, they have to already be good enough for him to bring on the road,
right?
You know, and serve the purpose he intends. And we see a lot of variety in him using different guitars for this, and then that guitar is the backup this show, but then the next show, the other guitar is the backup. And I think it took some time for him to settle into which was which. But by the time the space tape comes, he's clearly made a decision, because that's why one guitar gets 2 stars and one gets 1, because he had already decided this is 1, this is 2. And then the Hopper teachers like to only use this if I have a broken string or something, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, he had to have at least 2 guitars on the road anyway for tuning changes, you know, because they're playing some songs in E flat, and then some songs have to be in E to match the keyboard track that's playing, and so there's logistical reasons why he has to have multiple guitars on deck, and then you have a tertiary backup, which is the Hopper teacher after the dust settles, so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, as far as it being like this was the number 1 and the 5150 was number 2, I don't know if we can pin it down that to be that precise, but I certainly, and I think Dave expressed the same theory to me more than once. Definitely there was some back and forth over Ed figuring out, and I know I'm jumping around a lot, even in 1981, he had backup guitars because he needed guitars tuned to drop D.
Right.
Because there was no fine tuners on the Floyd, there was no way for him to quickly change tuning, so he needed guitars pre-tuned.
Right.
Just swap them between songs. And some nights the Frank was the drop D backup, and the Circles was the main guitar, or the Rude was the main guitar. So I think there was a lot of that. You know, if he was struggling with something, or like something wasn't working right, he could easily swap which guitar was the number 1. But over time, this won out because it really is just a special guitar, and I think we can all tell that when we make a good replica with good parts. It was a special guitar, so that's how we got here.
Yeah, that's I appreciate you saying all that, because that brings a lot of stuff to light, and it makes me think. What you said is kind of where I was always going, but you talked about you hit a couple of little avenues that I never really thought of. That kind of you opened up a couple of doors for me, and so I appreciate you saying that. I've always been a huge fan of the backup guitars that Ed had. I mean, of course, we love the 5150, we love the Frank, we love the Bumblebee, we love all the main ones. But I've, the 918V, I got a copy over there. I mean, all those interesting ones. We know in 1984, or we start in 1983, we know he had the Frankenstrap. We know, the Kramerad guitar came towards the end of the American tour and then into South America. I know Scott Smith said when they saw him in Philly, he was playing the Kramerad guitar. And that's when he had the big thing on his wrist. He broke his hand, whatever it was. What's interesting is we see the Neptune guitar. We see the Vetus guitar. We see the blue headstock Frankie. We see, of course, the Rasta, of course, the multi-tape guitar. Those were played live a few times, anyways, at least from pictures. But all those other offshoot Frankie style guitars, like the blue headstock Frankie, like the Vetus, all those. I wonder, the Neptune. I wonder, were those guitars backstage? Steve Nowicki, who we both know, a friend of ours, works for Howard Stern. I don't know if you've ever seen the Vetus. I've actually seen the Vetus, and Tommy owns it. It's a great guitar. We're not sure if those were backstage. Yes, it was given to Vetus backstage, but was it made for, was it just something that Ed had and then boom, I'm going to bring it because Vetus is coming to the show? Right. We don't know. I mean, The only backstage guitars we really see in Diver Down is the multi-tape guitar, the Rasta. You know, this obviously is there.
The Rude too. Early in the tour was backstage. There are photos.
Really?
Yeah. There's
I
a
did
photo.
not know that.
There's one Slow's photo where there's Mike playing his blood splatter Charvel, and there's some basses in the background. Ed's got, I don't remember if he's playing the Frank or the Pacer, the multi-tape Pacer, but behind him you see the Rasta on a stand and just barely in frame the Rude on a stand. Oh, and then of course there are those photos of Dave playing the Rude backstage, which are clearly in '82.
Yep. Gosh, I never thought. Oh, gosh, Donnie, I have that photo, but it never clicked until you just said that. That's right. Dave's play. I have. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that just. I've seen the photo, but do we really know if the Vetus, if the Blue Headstock Frankie, if the Neptune were backstage? I don't think so. I think they were giveaway guitars.
I'll say about the Vetus was absolutely intended for Ed. It was the second one ever made, and I'll say this because I know Tommy. I have a relationship with him, and we've spoken at length about his ownership of this guitar, and I've offered what I know about this stuff and done some research for him as a favor. And I'll say that all of my research, from talking to Paul, from looking at the timelines and the dates, that guitar was definitely made for Ed and given to him with the intent that it was going to be used by him. He owned it for some time. We don't know exactly how long, but it was relatively short compared to owning some of his other guitars. And he then gifted it to Vetus at a show. Yep. Van Halen was playing the show. Ed had it with him. Vetus was there. Did Ed have a problem with it that it didn't, do something he needed it to do? And he just said, well, you have it. Here's a gift from me to you, because he didn't have a use for it. We don't know exactly why he gifted it, and Vetus is gone now, so we can't talk to the guys who would know that. Yeah, there's Vetus, and actually, very interestingly, you can't really see it in this photo, but the guitar originally had an FRT4 prototype, just like but it's a prototype too. Like Ed's was, I don't want to it's confusing to talk too much about technical details, but there are some things about that tremolo that are different, notably from the
different than this one, Donnie.
Yes,
okay. Good,
substantially. And Ed's gold one was the same as the Vetus one, and Steve Lukather had one. The only difference is that those are chrome plated and Ed's was gold plated. As far as we know, Ed's was the only gold plated FRT4 prototype.
Now, what else do we notice different about this? There's no white knob. Mm-hmm. There's no white single coil. And I would venture to say that the string retainer is not black.
Right.
Like it is now. So I always say this, people raped all these parts off these guitars. The Neptune got raped. The Vetus got raped. Who knows? Obviously, the Hot for Teacher got raped. I mean, it didn't look anything like that when Ed played it in '84. And that's all cool. I mean, my Hot for Teacher looks just like it would kind of today. Yeah. But if you're really, Donnie would be the one to you and I are on the same wavelength. If you really want to go back, I've been thinking about putting this on my Vetus, but I've been wanting to ask you. I'm not going to do it if that's not the right version.
Well, you can't get the right version because only we think maybe Mike could tell you more about this, because Mike actually has one of really the only 100% confirmed chrome plated one. It was either owned by Lukather or the one that came off the Vetus, or maybe there was a couple more made. But basically the difference is the block and the tremolo plate are not screwed together like they would be on a typical tremolo. They're one piece of metal that was cast out of a mold and then plated. And then also part of the plating process is that the block is not square. The back corners of it are rounded. So it's like a
rounded. Yeah.
Right. And you can see photos of that in Ed, pictures of Ed's guitar, the back of the Frank in that era. And also, the one Mike McGuire has is just a dead ringer for the Ed tremolo. But really,
Darren has one of the real ones, doesn't he? Doesn't Darren have one?
I don't think he has one of those. But
maybe I'm wrong.
Darren is how I know about. I mean, Darren is my go-to for. He's been kind of out of the game because he got married and he's like, his wife owns a nail salon that he helps run, and he's always busy. But we get on the phone every once in a while. We'll talk for 5 hours about stuff and catch up. But yeah, he's
a while since Darren and I have chat. Yeah, he's a good guy though.
He's a great guy. I mean, the Van Halen gear website that he put together, I contributed massively to the research for that. So often it's really cool. Oftentimes with you Google like Frankenstrat or this or that, like it'll come up with my writing, and just like the picture will be something that Darren posted on the site. So it's the whole goal of that site was that people would start sharing it when these niche discussions of like history comes up, and it works. I mean, people know a lot more about these guitars now that the website has helped. Now the website's outdated and needs to be updated, and it's kind of broken, but it really helped to get the word out for some of these things. And to loop all the way back around, if I were you, I would put that FRT4 on just because it's closer and it's cool and it's got a vibe, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that, definitely. The thing that makes this, interesting is it's got the embossed logo, and I'm telling you, for the fine tuners on this thing are better quality than the FRT5, the Hanson Metalworks.
There's a bigger range too.
Yeah.
I mean, more tuning range.
Yeah. I mean, this is an original Hanson Metalworks FRT5, and it's awesome. And this, like I said, this is going on the 5150 when it comes in, and I love it. But it's so much fun to geek out over this stuff, you know. I don't know how to explain it, but you know, when I talk to Donnie, like all these light bulbs, they're going off left and right. I can't even remember them all because, like, oh yeah, some of the stuff I know what he's talking about. Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that. Whoa, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, that confirms this. There's all these light bulbs that go off. That's why the two of us bounce all over the place, you know, like, but that's the fun stuff. You know, I really wonder, you know, how many of us, people like us, you and me, and definitely others. I don't mean to put you and me in the category of only two people. There's many of us, but you know, the Stripe series guitars, EVH, all awesome stuff. Got nothing but respect for them. That's the after product of what Eddie gave us all. But the folks that really get into these details of the rare guitars, you know, the Dolphin headstock, you know, all that kind of stuff that Donnie was talking about earlier. There's so much mystical mystery to all this stuff, and that's the stuff that I love. You know, people ask me, hey, you know, what do you think about this Frankenstein, you know, the EVH version or this or that? I think they're great. I think they're awesome. I would recommend them to anybody. To me, that stuff is more tribute stuff.
Right.
I geek out on, and I just get off on all this. I want to make my replicas as accurate to what it was back in the day when Ed played it as it possibly can be, because that's just, I don't know, that's just what makes it fun for me. You know, John Conklin just says, hey John, how you doing? Which guitars were the same color as the 5150? Donnie, you can jump in on this. You know, again, going back to Paul, and I know Paul didn't necessarily paint the 5150, but we just used whatever was there. Mm-hmm. I was under the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, that the 5150, Neptune, and the the blue headstock Frankie, these were all the Chevy orange red color, correct? Would you?
As far as I know, and honestly, I am a lot more knowledgeable about like 77, 75 to like, you know, when the Kramer years start, I'm pretty knowledgeable, but there are guys who know this better than me. But with that said, I would tend to agree. Yes. Yeah,
it's you know, this, I know Hubbard and I had these conversations. We always believe that this guitar, the 5150, the Neptune, the others, and some people even said the 1984, because we think that the 5150 and the 84 Hot for Teacher is in that realm, but the 1984 and the 5150 just look like they were painted at the same time.
Yes.
But the 5150 wore differently. You look at Wolfgang holding the 84. It looks a lot more glossy. It looks a lot more deeper red. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like Donnie, you pointed out, pictures can be deceiving.
Very, with color especially, not just shapes, but color very much so.
I mean, when I saw the real Frank at the Met, I was blown away at how glossy it looked. I mean, yeah, it's behind glass, but it looked like it had a freaking clear coat on it to me.
And part of that a lot of people don't know, and I remember discussing this years and years ago, because people correctly pointed out, well, Ed wasn't going to grain fill. You know, these are people who are finishing guitars like Ed's and doing what they think Ed did and not getting the same result. So it's like, that's why there is that theory that the Frank body was his 61 Strat and it already had the clear coat as the sealer. But long story short, the answer is simply that the 51 or the Frank body was sealed when Ed got it. So if you already have a thick, you know, resin-based sealer, like I shoot polyester as sealer these days, and you can just, it's like, imagine painting over a polyfinish guitar. It's just like always super smooth and glossy and no grain because they've already done the work for you by having the poly. So I do the same thing by sealing, and I think that's what Wayne did with his bodies, is some sort of resin sealer. Rattle can be very glossy if it's applied over a smooth, well-prepped surface, as the Frank was. The 5150 and that stuff is a little different because it was going onto bare wood, and in fact, part of I think they were pretty thick coatings because they were just, you know, they knew how to paint and they knew how to get that sort of gloss even when you're painting unprepped wood. But totally different process between the two.
Yeah.
And how they wore, you know, is a consequence of that.
Yeah, I mean, John just said, you know, agree. I was blown away at the Frank painting candy apple and gloss. I mean, me too. I mean, I'm sitting there staring at the thing going, whoa, like it looked, yeah, it was the Frank. The paint job looked just like it. Everything was just, it was so many bells going off like, yup, cool. I was right about that. Whoa, I didn't see that. I didn't realize at the time that it had a whale tail, you know, it wasn't an FRT5. It used to be one, but I mean, it had a million Floyds on it, but it's got a whale tail bar on it. It's got the long stem, and it's got a Gatto small thin block.
It's actually a Schaller block, a stock OFR block, but he removed the plating. You can tell how rounded and messed up the block is because the plating was ground off.
That's interesting, Donnie. I'm glad you said that because on mine, so what I tried to do on mine was make it. I don't know if you can see that. Mm-hmm. It's got the long stem whale tail bar.
Yep.
But can you tell what kind of block that is?
It looks like a Schaller block to me with no plating. I mean, that's how they would look. That's how Ed's looks, basically.
It's an old block, it really is. And I tried to make this as close to the real one as I could, especially after seeing it at the Met,
Yeah.
It's
got the shit at Godot's tuners.
It's just so much fun. It's just great stuff. I wanted to say real quick before I forgot, there's a gentleman in here, Robert Snyder, who sent a message. Funny you brought up the 5150, Rob. Just today I sent a message to you on Facebook about relicking and painting. Love the stream. So I did, Robert, I just want to say I did see your message today. I was at work and I haven't had a chance to respond. I'm going to try to get back to you tomorrow. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you. I appreciate all the comments, but I will respond to your message tomorrow. And I appreciate everything you've been saying, and thanks for watching the show.
You got great fans.
Yeah, we definitely do, and this is what makes it all fun. Donnie, what else you got?
Right now my dog is he wants something, so maybe you'll see him when I grab the next guitar.
Yeah, go for it. Matt.
I just want to talk about this briefly because we talked about Lynn a while ago, and I did mention.
Let me put this thing back.
Sure. So I mentioned a guitar that he gave me. But this is actually not one he gave me. This is one that was given to me by a fellow named Jim Shine, who some people will recognize. He's kind of a collector and was around with all the Charvel era. This is a real Boogie Bodies, and it didn't have any bridge features, so I routed the tremolo out, but it had the pickup routes and the neck pocket. It was very rough. Like, it looked as if it was abandoned, but it's another hollow guitar, so that body is hollow.
Whoa,
and it's also, it's pretty. And then obviously it has the same through route that the Rude has. I made this neck, which is identical to the ebony neck that Ed had on his Boogie that was kind of a backup once or twice in '84.
Yep.
And is the sister neck to the one that Darren sent me and started my relationship with Lynn. So I had this body, and I decided the best thing to do with this is put Hanson Metalworks trim on it from Mike. And I will say about that, Lynn helped coordinate that deal because Lynn knew Floyd and Lynn was in the area and knew what Floyd was going through. So Lynn, when I asked him about those trims, he remembered that. He's like, yeah, I remember we hooked up and had those guys in Seattle, which was right around where Lynn was from, make those trims for Kramer. So anyway, I brought this out just to kind of connect the show. Like, this is another tribute kind of to Lynn. It's incomplete. I need a nut and pickups, but it's just a cool guitar.
Awesome, Donnie.
It shows the kind of like ideas Lynn had, where it's like he didn't care too much about the routes being super clean or like, but he was more artistic than that in the sense that, you know, he liked really nice woods for the top. He didn't care that this forearm contour cut away the top. It was just a thing, like a cool thing. And, you know, it's got 23 frets. It's a Gibson scale length. Just a really cool. The back is made from cherry wood. Beautiful. It looks kind of like alder, but when you sand it, it's got a different aroma. So that's a cool one. I need to get this finished, and as well as the other one that he gave me, and those will be my tributes to Lynn. But you know, too many things get in the way, unfortunately.
Donnie, do you by any chance, and I don't want to sidetrack you because I know you got other stuff, do you by any chance still have your Women in Love guitar? Because I still want to have you do one of those for me.
I don't. I took it apart because actually when I was working on some stuff for Tommy, we were testing some pickups, and I used it as my test bed because it was easy to swap the pick guard in and out, and I just never got it back together. But I have some, you know, I have these here. I might use one for to put that back together. Next thing I got, I think some people will like this. I made this.
Yeah, that is awesome. Man.
Which I have a real one, but you know,
Alan Garber, where are you, dude? Check out, Alan.
You know, Alan was a big help in me developing these to figure out all the details. You know, he had a build thread, and when I talked to him, he would help. You know, he'd give me. In fact, he sent me his original Bell truss rod, or he sent me a scan of a real one and his that he had made a copy. So I made him one. You know, that Bell truss rod cover is kind of rare for the Ibanez. And Ed's had it, of course. Ed's always had the stuff that's hard to find. Yeah. I made this one for myself because if I ever needed to sell my real one, I wouldn't miss it if I have this one to replace it. Because this thing is a fucking beast, man.
Oh, it looks great.
It's got the 2-piece pancake construction, so it's 2 pieces thick and 3 pieces wide, and the neck is 3 pieces wide with some flame in it. I mean, it's too much wood for this thing, and it really is a beast. And these are real Super 70 pickups. I tracked down some real Ibanez Super 70s, and these are real Ibanez Star tuners, the originals that came on these. And this is what this is exactly like Ed would have been when he got it
back in the day.
Yes.
Donnie, I can't decide. Well, I definitely want you to do me a Women in Love Strat.
Yeah,
piano neck on it. We talked about that a couple years ago, and I just the wedding was coming up and whatever. I said whatever, yeah. Hope she went to bed. Didn't see that comment. I didn't mean it that way, babe. I definitely want one of those, but I cannot decide if I want you. I know you did one for Dave Nesdal, and I got a chance to play it. It was awesome. I can't decide if I want one like that or if I want you to do me a Chris Holmes version.
Well, I'm doing a Holmes version right now. I can't talk too much about it, but I did a Holmes replica, which was unbelievable. You probably saw the pictures. Nick painted it, and I don't know. I guess he's cool with me saying that, but he did an unbelievable relic, and we got some pictures when Craig Parker Adams had it and was doing some video with it, and some nice freeze frames that show the level of relic on the back, and he just knocked it out of the park. He's doing another for me right now, and obviously it's winter time up north, so he's delayed with painting as you are. But that thing's a killer guitar, man. I mean, obviously there's a lot more money because of what it is. So it's like if you had to pick a cheaper option, let's go with the Women in Love first. But
yeah, right.
Great guitars, and I almost wanted to keep that Chris Holmes when it came back to me because it was just that much of a beast.
Yeah. That's such a badass guitar.
I know, and Nick just kills it. Nick nails everything he does. But these are great guitars, man. Really, like spec wise, and the neck shape, and the way they sound, and the way they I mean, they're. If you've never played an Explorer, you have played the one I made for Nesdal, but if you've never played one, you'd think that like, how do you play this, and how is it comfortable? But it's so comfortable and natural. to sit with and to stand with, and it's no wonder that Ed loved them. And they're really not that heavy because they're thinner. They're not 1 3/4; they're 1.5 inch thick, and you know, they're not light by any means, but they're not super heavy.
Well, honestly, it's funny you said that because when I played Dave's, Ed always said he could just rip ass on a 335 on that 335 neck. He just loved that, and I mean, I guess I understand what he's saying, but I will tell you when I played the one you made for Dave. By the way, Stan Muka says he has Dave Nesdall's Destroyer. Yeah. Again, Dave, rest in peace. That's awesome, Stan, because that's a great guitar. I wish I had it. Dave, I know he was so proud of that guitar, Donnie, when he got it from you. And I remember I played it one time when I went down to see him, and I was like, damn, I could freaking rip on that neck. It was just... And if that is any indication of what a real Destroyer played like, because I've never been able to play a real Destroyer, but I can only say that the one that you made for Dave, like the one you got right there, I would only imagine it plays so similar. And I was just like, whoa, I could just shred on this thing. And I'm not a great guitar player. I can play, but I'm nowhere near like a lot of you guys are. I fake it till I make it, but I'll tell you, I was just like amazed. Like I was doing the Spanish Fly run, and I was like, holy crap, this thing is insane.
Yeah. So when I build mine, I actually make the necks just a little bigger, just a little, because my real one, it gets really slim down in here, and it just doesn't fit my hand well. But this shape for me is perfect. And I don't know, the way the fretboard, the way they frets feel with the blind fret slots where the fret slots are filled in and the tang doesn't come out the edge. Just like all the little fit and finish details that are on the real ones. The nut width is great. The neck shape is great. They're great guitars. And we were talking earlier about the shape of the 78 Frank neck and how crazy it is. Kind of speaks to how Ed would come up with some of his lines. This speaks to how he came up with some of his other lines that were written on this guitar and what he was playing at the time when this was his #1 from 75 to 77. So, it's really cool. And I'm glad that it took me a long time to get set up to CNC these, because I used to build all this by hand, templates that I made myself through research, help with Alan, and owning a real one helped when I finally bought that. I don't even want to tell you the deal I got because you'd all hate me for how much I paid for that thing and how much they cost now. But that's a nice investment that helped me hone in on getting these super accurate, and also will pay for itself down the line. But now that I'm fully set up to CNC with the angled neck construction, everything about this is CNC'd exact to the real one. And honestly, not that I would ever be interested in trying to pass anything off, but I would be surprised if someone could tell this apart from a real Destroyer. Who knows what they're talking about?
Well, that's why I want one. And it's funny, you just made me think of an interview with Ed and Jazz talking about, you just said that, people would hate me if they knew what I paid for it, whatever. It reminds me of when Ed said to Jazz about those 2 Les Pauls, like, oh, you would kill me if, whatever. It's so funny because we're all thinking the same things at the same time.
Yeah.
That, gosh, I tell you, I'm looking at it right now, my Destroyer that you made, the Shark. Yeah, that was one of Dave's. That was Dave's. And I love that guitar. And I'll tell you, to this day, that thing plays incredible. The balance is a little different because it's got the chunk of wood taken out of it. But I will tell you that the neck on that guitar versus the neck on the Destroyer that you made for Dave, I did feel a lot of similarities. Yeah. The balance of the body was off, but if you put it in your lap, it's a little bit different, because you're not feeling the weight of it. But gosh, I'll tell you, Donnie, I really want to have you make me one of those. I can't decide if I want the Chris Holmes version or or that one. But
what's cool about this one is it is basically a stock Destroyer. The only thing that was weird about Ed's is it had white speed knobs. I don't know why. I don't know where they came from or if they were changed to that. They had white speed knobs instead of the normal knobs that would come on this. But what's cool about that is it also can be an homage to Ace or the other guys who played these things in addition to being your Van Halen one. But also the white, when this thing was white, that's cool too because that's how Van Halen 1 was recorded. The Destroyer had been painted white.
Right.
I don't know if you hear my dog. But
I do. I thought it was Barney here. He's sitting next to me. I thought he was growling.
He's upside down having the time of his life right now.
Hey, well, Stan Muka says I play that Dave's Destroyer all the time. Only thing I changed was putting original Ibanez Super 70 pickup in it. That's cool.
Yeah, just like these.
Cobra Kai Platoon says, how different are the Destroyer necks from the Gibson Explorer necks, Donnie?
I've never. Well, okay, sorry. I have played an Epiphone 58. Carina, the new Epiphone that's supposed to be like the 58 Carinas, and they are huge. I mean, the necks are. In fact, one guy, the guy who I made the Holmes replica for, sent me his Epiphone 58 Carina to shave down the neck and refinish to look like Ed's white Destroyer. Yep. And I really had to slim that thing down to get the neck to feel like the Destroyer. They're pretty slim. They're a little wider, I think. I don't know the specs to the 58 super well, but they're a little wider than what I think the 58s would be at the nut. And maybe even down here they get a little wider, but they just feel like really nice and slim and fast here, and they get a little bigger here, but it's like you have a shredder grip on them. It's not like you're having to wrap your hand around like an SRV kind of thing. Right. It's like you can still you can see when you're playing this thing how Ed came up with a lot of these like symmetrical lines and this command thing going on. Yeah, like take your whiskey home riff, like Alan does. Yeah. So it's very. I mean, the upper fret access is really good on these things. Like, with this cutaway, you can really get up there at ease. I do want to point out, I see Kip in the chat here. When I was talking earlier that I sold the second neck I ever made, Kip is the guy who bought that neck. So that's so cool. I have it. I think it's in the other room, but I have it. I just refretted it for him today and got everything touched up, and I'm going to send it out tomorrow. In fact, Kip, I have your shipping label right here, so I'm taking it down to UPS tomorrow.
Donnie's good for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's the Destroyer. I want to bring one more out because I am painting another one for a guy. I didn't plan on this, but now that we're talking about it, the grain on this one that I'm painting, like the grain on this one's really nice. You can see some flame going on. Beautiful. But wait till you see this one. I'm going to just set this here for now so you have something to look at. But I will be right back.
Donnie, you and I have to have a conversation because I need a Destroyer. Mike McGuire, I'm gonna when Donnie comes back, puts his headphones back on, I'm going to say this, but
all right, let me get my headphones on so I can hear the reveal, your reaction.
Hey Donnie, we were just talking about you, good stuff, of course, when you had your headphones off. Oh, 7/8. What's up, Jay? How you doing, buddy? Anyways, Mike McGuire says, Rob, do the Destroyer, the stock one.
Yeah, you got it.
I think we're going to have to go with that. So you and I got to have a chat.
Okay, well, I have wood, and I've been doing them. So let me put this one down. So
I have wood right now just looking at that.
Well, wait till you see this next one. Hang on. All right, so this is incredible because this is not sen. I haven't been able to get sen yet. I might, which is the Japanese wood that these are made from. I might have a lead, but those have gone nowhere in the past. But look at this thing. Look at the flame and the figure on this thing. There's a lot of flame in here, and there's just this big swirl. It's just like the showpiece of this guitar.
Oh, does that say Rob Johnson? Wait, does that say Rob Johnson on it?
Yeah. The back's pretty nice too.
Awesome. Oh, that's beautiful.
So this one, I sprayed this like 4 days ago, and I'm waiting for the lacquer to cure, maybe another week or so, and then I'll sand and polish it out. This is for a guy who, he just hit me up not long ago, and he's like, hey, can you do a Destroyer? So I quoted him. He's like, is that with or without paint? I said, without, and I'll charge you for the paint, which, I can do full builds, obviously, as you know, or I can just do the woodwork, and they take it from there. I've been trying to, like I said, by the way, all this gear here, all these necks, this Dano, this neck, which I didn't talk about, was just kind of a one-off thing that.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear about it.
All of these are for sale. So if anyone wants to, this one's not because this is for Dweezil Zappa, but I didn't get to talk about that. This is yours, obviously. So yeah, all these pieces are for sale. And if anyone needs a neck, anyone from this chat wants to get in touch with me or Rob, I can give a discount on an order. So if you're looking to build a guitar, this is your chance to, after you've soaked in everything we've talked about, it's your chance to use this as an opportunity to get a guitar going. So hit me up or hit Rob up and take care of you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so anyway, I'll put this back. But this thing, I knew you would get a kick out of this because just look at it. It like dances in the light.
Well, I mean, I'm going to take care of you on that VH1 next tomorrow, but I think you and I are going to be having a conversation because I got the Destroyer itch now.
Yep. Well, I'll take care of everybody.
Yep. What is Donnie? What is a just real quick for you before I forget? What is if someone was to get what's a ballpark? I've seen them on eBay and Reverb once in a blue moon. If someone was to pick up a 75 Destroyer, a real one today, what would that get them up? What do you think?
Well, they went crazy for a while and then had a little downturn because the market in general kind of turned around. But realistically, like price to sell, you can get one for $8,000. But the ones that are tip-top shape, you're talking 10, 11,000. You know, like the ones when they sell for top dollar, that's what they sell for.
Yep. Yep.
I'm seeing. I remembered this, but Stan pointed out that he actually came and visited me at the shop. He was in town,
nice,
nearby. So Stan stopped by, and I built him a Shark and a Destroyer, an unfinished Shark kit and an unfinished Destroyer kit, which he has. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out, Stan. I'm gonna go put this one back. Hopefully, it turns out this good.
Let's see what we got for questions here. Art Tabor, what's going on? Bry the Sign Guy, hey, what's up? Sorry, guys, we've been geeking out over stuff. We really have we've been trying to pick up with everything we can. But, Nelson Rodriguez, what's going on? Parabot 2, hey, what's happening, man? J708 says, Donnie's going to put a Schaller Lockmeister on one of my Ernie Ball JP16s. Floyd Rose Pro is a piece of garbage. Yeah, for sure. Dino Smith says, Rob, more videos, please. Hey, what's going on? Hey, buddy. How you doing?
He's been just very, very politely sitting under the chair the whole show, just like
Donnie. Purebred German Shepherd, or
no, he's half Belgian Malinois, half Dutch Shepherd.
Oh my God, what a beautiful dog.
He is crazy, but I love him. He's
really good. How old?
He's like 8 or 9 months. He's really smart. Really smart.
Dog. What a beautiful dog.
Thank you. He wants something from me right now. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Dino, I will do more videos. Like I said, Donnie was. I did a video a few weeks ago. About a month or so ago. I think it was after Christmas, before New Year's. It's just like let you guys just Rob pull this guitar. Rob pull this guitar out. So we had a lot of fun, but. Yeah, Donnie is definitely a frequent flyer in the Rob Johnson communication circle.
Yes.
So this is something we've wanted to do for a while, and it's going to happen again. But
well, certainly after I build a bunch of guitars for you, we'll have to have me back on to talk about them.
Yeah, Donnie, would you do me a favor? You and I have had this conversation. I just got to go take a quick bathroom break. Would you do me a favor and discuss for a couple of minutes the process that you went on? This is one of yours. Matt Anthony, this is a spare 5150, although it is it's got all the right hardware. It's got the wire stuff on it. This is one of yours. And would you do me a favor and discuss the process of how you developed this headstock changes that it went through?
Sure.
Because I know there was a post on the 5050 site on stocks. Yeah. I just wanted you to have an opportunity to discuss. I want to make sure everybody knows the status of where these headstocks are right now. This is the latest and greatest that you did.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if I'm having some connection issues or what's going on, but I'll do my best. I'm hoping I'm coming through loud and clear. So let me rewind. In around 2019, early 2020, I was building guitars and I was set up with CNC. So I had a relationship with Chris Locke, just kind of talking to him, and we would share information, and you know, he would help me with this, I'd help him with that, usually to do with design and whatnot. And it came to the point where I was trying to do 5150 next, just as my own endeavor to try to, you know, get that right, because you couldn't really get it accurate. Butala was starting to make them, but they were doing them 2-piece instead of 1-piece. There were things that were basically it was a hole in the market that nobody had filled. So I was interested in doing that, and I got talking to Chris about, like, what do you think about this? How do we manufacture that? We would just kick ideas back and forth all the time. And Chris, after years of us communicating, finally just came out and said, listen, I've always wanted to offer this product, and I don't know how. And if you've figured out how, which by that time I had prototypes and stuff, he's like, why don't we just do this deal where you make the Lock 5150 necks, and, that will be a new product on the site. People can buy it. I'll take some money off the top as kind of a finder's fee for people taking the order. You produce them and ship them out. And that's what we did. So I did some research into developing and getting the headstock construction accurate, and basically all the legwork to making that happen. And at first they were good. I mean, at the time they were probably the best you could get because they had the laminated headstock with the plug tuner holes, and all the construction was as good as we could, as accurate as we knew how to get. As far as like the headstock shape, we talked about this a little before. Pictures are very deceiving, and it's very difficult to get something accurately traced from a photo that's then going to be a one-to-one of the real thing, for a variety of reasons that are technical and hard to explain. But you can't just drop a picture into a CAD software and trace it and expect it to show up in real life the same way that the original does. So through the years, Chris and I would have long discussions and hard discussions sometimes, because people would buy our stuff thinking like, this is, well, and at the time it would be the most accurate, but then we'd come out and make a revision to make it just that much more accurate. So what Rob was alluding to, and I know my dog's being really forcing himself into discussion right now. There was a post in the 5150 group the other day questioning the accuracy of the lock neck, which is, we welcome that. We like to get people's opinions on, is this accurate? What do you guys as customers think we should incorporate into our designs? And this post was more or less questioning if the 5150 neck from Lock is an accurate product. But unfortunately, what they were using for comparison was a prototype photo that I took 5 years ago of the first neck or second neck that I ever made before I don't even think that neck got sold, or if it did, it was sold at a discount. And countless revisions have been made. But it wasn't just the neck too. Chris and I sat down and we bought original 82 Pacers, and we did all the deep diving we could to figure out exactly what makes a 5150 special. How did Sports sand their bodies and manufacture stuff at the manufacturer that was doing bodies for Kramer? How does an ESP neck that has wood added and tuner holes plugged translate to a 5150? So both Chris and I bought real Pacers and measured all this stuff, duplicated the source material first, and then compared it to and scaled images, and just really did a deep dive. We pulled out all the stops to get this thing as accurate as possible. And we're at the point now where I'm pretty confident that our 5150 neck, the Lock 5150 neck, which I have, in fact, if anyone has a 5150 on order with Lock right now, these three are going out to Connor to put frets in. That's our deal, basically, is I get them this far and Connor puts the dots in and frets them. I have one here that I'm keeping for myself. That's a Lock product. These, as far as I can tell from my research, are indistinguishable from the real thing. And Paul Unkert, he's told me the same. How much he would know based on photos of this, I don't know. But Paul seems to think they're indistinguishable. So it's been a long process. We're always open to people's input into how it can be made better or what they think could be done to change it. Because, this stuff is iterative. It can't just you can't come out and get it exactly right on the first try. It's just, it can't happen. There's things you're going to miss. There's things you're going to overlook. You might get 80% the first time, and then that remaining 20%, the next revision, you get 80% of the 20%. See, so every time you're going to get closer, but you're going to miss out on something. And eventually, with enough revisions, you nail it. And I think, between the way that this blends and the positions of the plug tuner holes and the positions of the birch wings and everything about the shape on these necks, the short Floyd shelf, the transition here, everything about it, as far as I can tell, is accurate. Now, will something come out in the future, maybe a better photo and a more head-on shot? Maybe. But for now, I would be pretty confident buying this product. In fact, I mean, I use this product for my own replica. It's not like I'm making this and going out and buying a Musiccraft neck. And as great as Musiccraft necks are, and as wonderful of a guy as Scott is and how knowledgeable he is, they more so focus on generic necks for projects that are an homage and allude to Van Halen stuff, where we're pulling out all the stops. I mean, we do literally everything to construct this neck to be as wonky as possible to copy what Unkert did. Yeah. So yeah, it was a process. And now Connor Baldacci is doing a good job taking over Locke, and we're working together. I had a long call with him today about some ideas we have for the company going forward, and it's all good stuff. And I'm glad to have been involved in that. And Chris was just like Lynn and I shared a bond. I mean, Chris was a mentor to me, I would say.
Yeah.
If I have to give one person all the credit for my how I build guitars and how I learned to build them well, because I could build guitars when I started working with Chris, but when we got really tight and he really brought me under his wing and taught me, I mean, he was so good at what he did, and there's a good reason that Locke has the reputation it does for quality product.
Donnie, that's going to bring us into our next topic, which is the Rockinger tremolo on our Pacers, which I'm going to ask you to pull yours out.
Sure.
Real quick, before I just want to hear your theory on this. These headstocks, these lawsuit headstocks, are how that neck you're talking about, the 5150 headstock, was derived, and the pieces the wings that were glued on, and this turning into the Kramer Classic neck and all that. My question to you is, what is your thought? You and I discussed this a little bit earlier, but the thin, this is a 81, early 82 Kramer Pacer.
Right.
It's even got the input jack here, and I got this from Tommy from Music Zoo. This is a guitar I had my eyes on for a long time. This neck is super, super thin. I mean, it feels like paper. But the thickness of the headstock is so thin. The 5150, in your opinion, how thin is the headstock?
Right. So let's talk numbers real quick. So this is a Kramer Classic. It's more or less identical to that neck, aside from the shape being modified, as a result of the Fender cease and desist letter. So this thing has pretty thick polyester on it. That's the finish that's on it. And the thickness, even with the extra thickness of the finish on this neck, it measures about 0.54 inches. A typical headstock that we make is 0.57. So you're already a 32nd of an inch, which is small, but in terms of headstock thickness, it's considerable.
Sure.
You're already a 32nd under. That's with the finish on. So consider that Paul scraped the finish off, which reduced the thickness further. Then he trued up these edges and added wood, which may or may not have been level and the same thickness, which then he had to sand that all flat.
Right.
Every step of the way, you're losing thickness. So I measured and had a guitar in my hands to evaluate, which, without getting it too far into details because it's still ongoing, it was a guitar that sold at auction for 6 figures, and it was alleged to have been one of Ed's major backup guitars. And the story was dubious, so it came to me to assess and write a report about, which I did. That headstock was made similar, though Paul Unkert claimed he didn't do it, but it was made the same way that Paul would make his headstocks. That thing was like less than half an inch thick, which is almost an eighth of an inch thinner than a standard headstock thickness.
Yep.
So it's about 3/32 thinner. So with all that said, the 5150 headstock was notably thinner, as far as we can tell. It was notably thinner than, what's he doing? Sorry, he's ripping the tag off of my chair right now.
That's okay.
The 5150 headstock is notably thinner than a standard headstock thickness that you would build to, but it was not so thin to be, non-functional, let's say.
Right. Yep. No, sure. I know Paul telling me one time that, Ed was like, he just wanted those headstocks so thin, especially in the back where, when it met the neck. And it was almost to the point of what Paul said was like, we can't do that. Like, I mean, we can't, which is so cool to me. And I know we all try to replicate it, but it makes perfect sense how the headstock of the 5150 broke.
Well, you have a joint right here.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of surface area and very thin headstock. So, inevitable.
That's
right?
pretty awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff. I just wanted. I was interested to hear what your take on the headstock shape, thickness, the design, and how over time, you guys have tweaked that. I think you guys have probably one of the most incredibly accurate copies of what the real one is. Maybe one of these days we're going to get lucky and we're going to see the 5150 hit the Met or somewhere, and we'll get
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, there's people I can't say much, but there's people who are trying to make that happen. I'll just say that.
Yep. That's going to be a great day. I think we were lucky with the Frankie, and hopefully we got some more good stuff coming. Donnie, would you by any chance be able to pull out your Kramer Pacer and
Sure.
look at some rocking gear stuff here for a few minutes?
Totally, yeah. And I have a lot to say about this for reasons we'll get into. All right. Yeah, so this one, I got this from the guys at Roman Guitars, actually. And the only reason I bought it is because it had a rockager, which I wanted to study and duplicate. So it's just the same as Rob's. The only reason mine's cleaner is because I totally took it apart and polished it up. Because I had to take it apart to measure anyway. But it's got that less so. But it's got the locking nut. It's got
awesome.
That on the back. Everything on this guitar is original. And it's in pretty good shape for what it is. I thought it was funny that they were just totally haphazard with these things. They were routing them during assembly to make them all fit, and everything's janky on these things. But the Rockinger is very interesting because Dieter, who I alluded to earlier, Dieter Goldsdorf, who came up with this is all a German thing. And Paul told me he used to run into Dieter all the time at the was it the Frankfurt Guitar Show or Hamburg? There was a guitar show in Germany, and they would go out there, I guess, because Kramer was using all Schaller products. So tuners early on, all the tuners for Kramers were Schallers, like when they were aluminum necks. All the bridges, all the pickups, they're all Schaller products, and Schaller's in Germany. So they had this relationship going to Germany and dealing with those people. And that's, I guess, at the guitar shows, they run into this guy Dieter, who has they called it the Rockinger True Tune Tremolo, which had fine tuners. So these screws can be, it's the same idea as a Floyd basically, but it retrofits into a vintage trim. So it has 6-bolt rocking plate, and then it kind of slots into that, and then it has a locking nut or locking system behind the nut, which so overall it kind of behaves like a Floyd. And I think Ed was really attracted to these, and maybe even particularly Kramer in general, because it had this thing that he wanted the Floyd to have, which was fine tuners.
Yeah. And
he wasn't getting it from Floyd at the time, so I think he started experimenting with this. It was almost called the Edward Van Halen Tremolo for a while. There was some promotional material made that was calling this thing the Edward Van Halen model Tremolo.
Yep.
And of course, he had it on a couple guitars. The double neck had it. His purple Pacer had it. He had a white Pacer very similar to this one that had it. It didn't ultimately happen because, frankly, there you go, exactly. Between you and me and everyone here in this chat, these things are kind of junk. They don't. Yep. They just don't perform. They're okay. They were a step in the right direction towards what we got with the Floyd Rose. They're hard to tune. Like the fine tuners are very stiff because there's not a lot of leverage on getting them to. Basically, the way it works is that there's this thing is the top of an anchor, which the string goes into in the bottom, and it rotates on a pivot, which maybe I can show you this way. There's a stainless steel pin in there, and it rotates around that, and this little fine tuner screw will push it to rotate the string forward and backwards to change the pitch. But it's very hard to get it to turn. So what I do when I have an arm in it is I'll dump the bar to reduce the tension, and then I can more easily adjust it. But even then, it's difficult. So,
Donnie, you're right. I was just tuning this up the other day.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't turn these freaking things. I mean, you can put a flathead screwdriver in there, but like, what the hell? These things are. It was like so tough to turn them.
Yeah, if they had made this, I'm just spitballing. If they had made this block taller and had the same device, there would be more leverage
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of room between where the string anchors and where the screw is pushing on it, so you don't get a lot of leverage to overcome. So like a Floyd works basically the same way, but instead of rotating this way, it has the front of the saddle clamped down and there's a pivot that lets the part that's holding the string tip up and down. And then the lock screw, the fine tuner pushes down or up on the lock screw. So, but it's very far away from the pivot, so you get a lot of very fine control, and the leverage is good. The forces are much lower. So, really, it's the same idea as what ultimately the Floyd Rose came up with, but the Floyd Rose implemented it in a better way. And my dog, if I can point out, just opened my door and walked out of the room, which he taught himself how to do. So he probably won't be bugging me as much anymore for the rest of this, but. That's my pacer. That's a little bit about the Rockinger. And I actually made one of these. I made a copy of it on my little CNC machine. I don't have my big one running yet to do more serious like steel mill work. But I'm able to machine brass, and I made one, and it works just as poorly as the real thing. So I have a bunch of Rockinger parts. I know Mike, is it Mike or maybe Sean? So someone got some Rockinger stuff from me. That I made, and it's to spec, so it fits original Rockinger parts. So if you ever need like extra screws or whatever, something wears out, let me know and I can hook you up.
You know, it's funny. I've owned 3 or 4 guitars over the years that had these Rockingers on them, and I got rid of them just for, to get different guitars, different projects. And then when I saw this, I was like, I gotta have that. It's just freaking awesome. And I got it. And I mean, it's got the original, Gatto on. And I mean, they're just, Donnie's does too. Yeah. They're just the best. They're perfect for the collection. It's even got the old Dunlop.
My real Destroyer has those. Whoever had my Destroyer before I bought, that's not what came on them, but everyone put those on everything.
That is so cool. I gotta say, in playing the Rockingers, Donnie, I think you said this one time in a video you were on, and I don't remember. Hey, Fruitcake Tony's here, by the way, too. How you doing, Tony? Good to see you, brother.
We got to do something, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. You said something that really people freaking hate these things. They just hate them. And I've never hated them. I've liked them, but they're nothing like a Floyd. But Donnie's right, in my opinion. They were the first step in that direction, and it's no doubt why Ed went the way that he did. But I have found, in my experience, if you set these things up right, you can get by with them. They're okay. They're not great, but I have found a way to actually make these things work.
Definitely.
Have you found the same?
Yeah. I mean, this guitar is great. It's a cool guitar. I mean, you have to be careful when you're locking the clamp down to not overdo it, or you'll snap the string. And these don't have a ton of range on them, and they're hard to adjust. So it's like, and I mean, I don't even want to get into this, but the string height and intonation system is like, for setting these things up, is a pain in the ass, because you can't just adjust these screws to raise or lower the saddles. You have to unlock the intonation screw, which makes the thing fly forward. Then you can adjust the height. And you can only go so far until they're like sticking way up at too high of an angle, and it doesn't clamp down correctly. So they have their problems, but like we both say, they were a step towards what had to happen to the Floyd Rose. Because the Floyd Rose was wonderful, but it could not exist without fine tuning. It just it couldn't. It needed fine tuners. So once this thing kind of set that in motion, and they got that taken care of with the Floyd, Ed was all on board, and he finally he's like, this is it. And Ed, I mean, he used that for the rest of his life. So
for sure.
Yeah.
I think we're probably getting ready to go. We're pushing 3 hours, which is time has just flown by. Donnie, I think you and I got to do this again.
I agree.
Really
part
soon.
2.
We got to do a part 2. Yeah. I was wondering if you would. I forgot to ask you about this before we went live. Would you be able to explain the Rockinger system on the yellow double neck guitar? In that, I know we all kind of thought it was a Schaller Badass on the
12-string side,
and then Rockinger on the on the 6. But can you just explain a little bit how that came to pass? And I never even knew they made a Rockinger bridge for a 12-string like that.
In fact, I don't think it was for a 12 string, and I'll explain. So when I asked Paul, because I've been planning a double neck for myself for years, and I've been picking pieces together, measuring this, measuring that, and kind of pulling everything together that I'll need to make one. Currently, the only thing left I need to manufacture every part would be the aluminum neck, which I'm working on. But the 12-string neck was an aluminum neck, and it had specific dimensions, which I've worked out. But when I was looking at that bridge, I didn't know what it was, because I had heard from you and from Dave and guys like that in the past that it was a Schaller 450 or 455 or something like that, which is the Schaller's equivalent of the Badass bridge. So the Badass is basically a brass wraparound bridge that was made in the USA. Leo Kwan Badass is what it's called. I have one actually somewhere that for Coletti that never got used. And I asked Paul, I'm like, look, I looked at these pictures and what is that? I don't go to people like, hey, you said this and I think it's that. What do you say? I'm like, hey, what that double neck, by the way, do you remember what bridge was on it? And he's like, yeah, that was it had to be a Schaller. We use Schaller for everything. So, I looked into it and he's not wrong, because the red, white, and black double neck does have the Schaller 455 on it. Yeah. So which is a wraparound bridge. Right. And the strings go through it, wrap around, go to the neck, the headstock, and then the strings at the headstock come around it to the body. So he wasn't totally wrong on that front, but I kept looking at and I'm like, that's not, it's not a gold 455, it's not whatever. So I thought, like, I was talking to Chris Gill, and I think I floated this to Mike, and I'm like, I think that could be a Rockinger product, because very little is known about over here. Very little is known about the Rockinger line of products because they were German, and the only thing we get to see is what happened through Kramer and whatever Rockinger guitars have made it over here. So, long story short, Chris is like, "Well, I have a Dieter at Rockinger. I've talked to him a few times. I have his info. Why don't you try emailing him?" So, basically, I pulled together everything I had, and I sent Dieter an email, and I said, hey, I know that you made this Rockinger tremolo and everything you did with that. I was wondering if you had any info on what this bridge is. And he just straight up, 10 minutes later, this guy in Germany replies to my email, the guy who invented all this product before, back in the day. Yeah. He's like, yeah, that was one of our products, and this is the company that made it, and this is, here's their contact info. So I'm like, first of all, my mind's blown. And I had already made a 3D model of what I thought it was in the spec. And I sent that to him, and he's like, yeah, that looks exactly like dimensionally. That looks exactly like what we made. So I got in touch with the manufacturer, and I basically forwarded my conversation with Dieter and asked them a bunch of questions. Like, do you guys still have patterns for this? What were the specs? And they more or less told me that they definitely made those bridges, what would end up being on Ed's yellow and black double neck as a 12-string bridge. And unfortunately, when they would do little one-off jobs, they would keep records, but it was all handwritten paper records. And when they updated everything to digital in the 90s or whenever, they didn't get all of it. So they basically told me they wouldn't be able to pull up those dimensions. But if I floated, I said, well, if I sent you CAD drawings, could you make them again? Could you remake them? And they gave me a pretty good price, but the problem is I had to order 100 of them. So, I'm not going to make 100 Kramer double necks, and I don't think I'll be able to sell those off. I did float. This is just kind of like, it didn't go anywhere, but I floated to Tommy, like, hey, on some Coletti guitars, because I co-designed the Coletti guitars with Tommy, and they're wonderful. Anyone in the New York area, Music Zoo, go into the Music Zoo and play a Coletti. They're really cool stuff that Tommy and I put a lot of work into. But
good stuff.
I floated to him like, what? We could use this as a wraparound. It'd be cool. Instead of just using the off-the-shelf, like a Tone Pros wraparound or whatever, do something unique for the Coletti. So that might still happen. And if it does, maybe we could get them in quantities to where I could order from the original German manufacturer that made Ed's original with my drawings to have them remade. But
that's so cool.
When I did that double neck for the customer I talked about earlier, when you get blocks of brass to machine something, it's usually bigger than you need for the one thing. So I had the block of brass was big enough to make 3 of those bridges. So I have one for my guitar, one that went out on his guitar, and one third one that hasn't even been finished, sanded, or filed yet, but I have it out in the shop. And if someone out there wants a brass wraparound for their 12-string, I've got it.
That's cool. That's pretty neat stuff. When I saw your post that came out, I think it was Instagram. Mm-hmm. You did your yellow double neck. you put that out, and I'm like, yeah, that's. I think I responded in one of the messages, and I said something about the bridge, and you go, Rob, they're both rocking.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? It like blew my mind. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I never even knew that. And I'm looking at mine right up there on the wall now, and yeah, it looks great. But that is definitely something that one day, if you ever came, that came to fruition, I would absolutely upgrade mine to put that.
I could definitely make you one in house. So if you want that, then we can make that happen. I mean, we'll have to get together on specs to make sure it would fit, or I'll have to make one that would fit. But yeah, that can absolutely happen.
That would be cool. That's definitely that's a fun guitar, and that's another one. I mean, I've had mine since, gosh, I think I got mine. Actually, Chris made it. Chris did the box.
I know. I helped him with the drawings that would ultimately make it. That's before we did the 5150 stuff. I helped him with those drawings.
Because Hubbard and I did one together. We both did them together, and he painted it and everything, and it was great. And I remember, that's just one of those guitars that I was like, I never in a million years would have thought back in the early 2000s or late 90s, whatever, that we would have one of those.
Yeah.
I remember showing. I did not have that guitar when I met Paul for the first time.
Yeah.
We did discuss it. And since then, when I got mine, I sent Paul pictures, and he's like, that is so freaking cool.
I sent him pictures of mine, and he said something like, holy shit, that looks so good. Unk approved, thumbs up. And I'm like, thanks, dude.
I know. It's so amazing to have these guys, that actually did this back in the day. And we reproduce this stuff, or you guys reproduce this stuff, or whatever. We show what we have, and just to get that seal of approval, it's just amazing. It's really cool stuff.
I totally agree.
But yeah. Well, I guess we probably should conclude. But just one thing real quick, because everybody keeps talking about it. This is also a Donnie guitar, and finished by CHS Customs, Craig. And this is, I tell you, it's got all the real stuff on it too. I mean, you can't even tell that it's not the real deal. But this is one of Donnie's projects, one of his custom parts kits. Yeah. And
Craig nailed that finish. That's one of the best finishes I think I've seen on one of them.
Dude, you can jump in and swim in.
I know you can see it moving, like the quilt moving as you move it around. Yeah. It's amazing.
And it plays amazing. And of course, I got to put all the real deal stuff on it, But I just want to say, Donnie, thank you very much for jumping on the show. I think we've really had a lot of fun tonight. Don't go anywhere. Just chat for a second when we get off. But sure. If I missed any, I think Dimitri's in here.
I saw it, yes.
Jimmy 1647. Oh, you guys. We were talking early, buddy.
Yeah, Dimitri definitely started some of this too. So you bear some responsibility for this, buddy.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, he's drained my wallet a few times, no doubt about it.
Yes, I know.
In a good way.
Yes. I've been to his house. Lovely, lovely house.
Yeah.
Very hospitable.
Yep, for sure. There's a great bunch of folks in the community here, but I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Donnie and I have been trying to do this for a long time, and we will do it again. I think we've only, as Ed has said many times, we just the tip of the iceberg, the tip of the what does it say? Where did we get to the iceberg?
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, we'll do this again.
Yes.
Thank you guys for watching. Donnie, don't go anywhere.
Yes, sir.
Fun. And yeah.
Till next time, guys.
Good night, folks.